A warrior was fighting a beast while another was eating, and commenting that monster meat should taste quite good. The warrior, struggling to restrain the creature, replied that this was exactly the case, so he should stop eating alone and help with the beast. Hero got up and said it was a headache, but it was okay, for the sake of the meat he would help, and he used an explosion. In an instant, the monster fell unconscious. The guy wielding the sword was not surprised by such strange magic. He had seen that before. In fact, the first enemy they faced ended the same way. Hero returned to the bonfire and demanded that they speed up the preparation of something delicious. The swordsman didn't understand this kind of attitude and was ready to argue. But a girl approached and said that fighting was bad. The boy immediately softened and said, even when she was angry, she still seemed adorable. Hero again encouraged the guy to cook something tasty. That made him annoyed again. Muir tried to hold him back and told Hero that he shouldn't fight either. Hero sat thinking that honestly he wasn't bad at fighting monsters, as arrogant as that might sound. He still couldn't fully believe it, but that meant quite a bit of time had already passed. That's probably why he was called to this world. The boy had been summoned to another world. The first time he arrived, the officers were extremely happy to have managed to summon heroes, and the princess had successfully performed the ritual. The girl also said she was happy to finally be able to summon heroes here. The guys already knew each other. Started asking if everyone was okay. The princess thanked them for answering her call. The young men did not understand what was happening and looked at her in vain. So, the princess realized there was confusion and apologized for the lack of explanation. She pointed to the exit and promised that His Majesty would explain everything in detail, so they should follow her. The guys looked at each other thoughtfully. Hero thought that it didn't seem like a dream, but he didn't know what that place was. Surely it wasn't Japan. It must have been a sudden invocation of Hero. He concluded that this was not a dream or a hallucination. What it meant was that this really was another world. When the king saw them, he was surprised that they had actually come, and he thanked them for it. He understood that everyone was confused, suddenly pulled from their world, but he asked them to calm down so he could explain everything. Hero immediately realized that he was a selfish person. The king began by saying that they were in the kingdom of Victoria, the human country in this world, Idea, and he was the ruler of this land, Rudolf Strauss Arklium. The girl beside him introduced herself as the first princess, Lilith. Rudolf continued, explaining that the reason, Hero needed to defeat the evil demons that threatened Victoria's safety. Taishi was shocked to hear that they had to defeat demons. Rudolf explained that this was due to the fact that Idea was inhabited by 4 races: humans, demons, beastkin, and spirits. These races lived together, but now, except for the spirits, tensions among them were greater than ever. The Demon King wanted to destroy humanity. The demons possessed immense magical and physical power, making them unstoppable in battle. If war broke out, humanity would have no chance. For this reason, they resorted to the magic of summoning ancient heroes, known only to the royal family. Humans did not possess the magical power necessary for this, so such a powerful spell carried risks. But the princess was happy that it worked this time. Taishi asked what this time meant. Rudolf answered honestly he had 3 daughters. In fact, he had 3. 2 tried to perform the rite. 1 died. The other was still in a coma. Hiro thought to himself that the king had sacrificed his own daughters. Taishi said that they understood him and asked if they would be able to protect the people of this country if they dealt with the demons. Rudolf confirmed that all 4 heroes were present. Then he realized that there were actually 5 of them. Although the legend mentioned only 4, he assumed that the 5th was also a hero. He explained that each of them should have skills in mind and asked them to check their strength. Everyone was amazed to see that they really were heroes. It was written in their title section. When Hero saw all that, he realized they had truly entered an RPG world. The princess explained that the words and symbols were being translated based on their original language, from her own world, to simplify communication. The king then asked Hero what his title was. The boy replied that he was not a hero, Everyone was surprised, and the king, visibly anxious, asked who he was then, a magician or a wise man. The princess supported her father, saying that none of this was written in any of the documents. Still, if he could not participate in battles, she asked directly what his title was. Hiro closed his eyes, and he replied that his title was Silent Observer. Everyone was shocked. Ishi suspected that it had something to do with the way Hiro used to silently watch them while they talked in the classroom. Before the king, Hiro said that he was just an ordinary person who, by chance, got involved in this. Chika angrily asked what he meant by those people. Hiro began to explain that, in other words, only the other four would be summoned. He had no connection to the situation. He asked the princess what she planned to do to resolve it. And he continued to say that everyone had been summoned solely for the benefit of the Empire. He was certain that their families were worried to the limit. Not that he personally cared, since he believed they were not connected in any way. Taishi asked Hiro, but aren't we classmates? Hiro replied, so, what if we went to the same school? He pointed out that they hadn't talked since they ended up in the same class, and if there was any connection between them. It was almost invisible. Taishi had no answer for that, and Hiro continued, saying that the kingdom only needed those four. He had nothing to do with it. Surely they couldn't expect someone like him, an ordinary person, to fight against demons and monsters. The king asked what he intended to do then. Hiro replied that they should be able to return to their world. The king stated that, according to the documents, the demon king knew the return magic. Taishi then shouted that all they needed to do was defeat the demon king as quickly as possible. Hiro thought to himself that Taishi was pretty dumb, but the king said it was true. The country was wonderful, they came to love it, and now they were also part of the royal family. The princess reassured them that they had nothing to worry about. The princess then revealed that, in fact, all traces of her existence had been erased from her original world. Everyone was shocked. Shuri was very upset. It was as if they had never existed. Lilith realized she hadn't explained everything properly and asked the girls to calm down. It was all part of the summoning spell. If they returned, everything would go back to normal. Hiro realized that everything they had just heard was probably a lie. The Emperor only wanted to persuade them to help by any means necessary. It seemed that he wouldn't be able to return to his world anytime soon, but he didn't really mind. After all, he didn't care where he lived. Taishi agreed with Hiro, saying that the summoning had been too quick and, honestly, everything was a bit selfish. But they would still do what was asked of them. The girls supported him and said that the four of them had played many morps. Anyway, today they had to go to a boring appointment. And that would be fun for them. The king, joyful, realized that everyone agreed to take on the creation. Hiro apologized and said he would follow his own path. As he had no obligations to this country, he did not need to fight. He was not a superhero like the others. But he couldn't avoid the fact that he had already been summoned here. This world was very different from his own, and it wouldn't be a problem for them if he spent his time as he wished and asked if that was true. No one could argue with him because it was true. Suddenly, Taishi grabbed his hand and asked how he could call himself a man. When the people of this country lowered their heads waiting for them, didn't he think it was, at worst, trying to help them a little? Hiro withdrew his hand and said he didn't think so. Chika asked Taishi to just leave him alone, as they didn't need him. They don't care about him. And it may seem like a game, but it's still reality, which means that Amro will really have to risk his life. They are all heroes, but Hiro is an ordinary person, and if that's the case, they should consider how he feels right now. Taishi realized that the girls are right, so they will do everything on their own. Hiro turned around and wished them luck. The princess ran away and said that she was very sorry. But Hiro turned around and asked not to worry about it and left the castle. He traveled through the city and, above all, the first priority, he must gather information using the basics of RPG. His profile said he had the magic of words. He didn't know what it meant, but he decided he was going to slowly find out on his own anyway. He needed money first. One way to make money in raw peas is by searching the shelves in other people's houses. It seemed quite dangerous. There was another way, for example, to kill monsters or complete missions, but for that he needs to join a guild. Furthermore, he is not sure that his information about this world is correct. He saw a fortune teller on the street. She asked him if he wanted to know his destiny. The guy replied that he didn't have any money, but she kept insisting that it seemed like he wanted to ask something, and she said he was from another world. Harrow was very surprised. He became interested in knowing who this old woman really was. Harrow asked how she knew. The fortune teller laughed and asked her not to make such a frightening face, as if she had discovered her most terrible secret. She gave him a little stool and said that, in honor of his first visit to their country, she would tell his fortune and asked him to sit down. Harrow thought he had no interest in what she would tell him, but she guessed correctly that he was from another world, and this old woman could give him good advice. And besides, if her supposed prediction of the future was some kind of magic, then he had one more reason to listen to what she would say. The woman had already begun to look into his destiny, and said that it seemed he had quite a strange star of fate. Harrow didn't understand this, so the fortune teller began to explain that, at the heart of every person, there are their stars, their color, size, shape. The intensity of the shine depends on their character, but his is dark blue, which seems to suppress the burning red emanating from it, and its shape is a perfect sphere, and the light it emits draws the eye. She had seen many stars, but had never met one so strong before. The young man asked her what she could say about her. The woman laughed and replied that soon he, or rather, he had already acquired new wings. They would be wide, strong, and warm for everyone. And everyone, now those who seek these wings will probably connect to their light. The young man asked to stop, because for him it was already too much. He preferred to stay alone. The old woman replied that she was just one of an infinite number of possible futures, and, by the way, it seemed to her that he wanted to ask her something. Harrow reflected on that, but he still couldn't think of any question. He got up from the bench and thanked the fortune teller for the information. He bid her farewell. She replied that gratitude was not necessary. She was happy to have met someone whose brilliance she hadn't seen in a long time. He asked if she didn't say that she was seeing something like that for the first time. The old woman replied that, to tell the truth, once, when she was still very young, she met a traveler between worlds similar to him. He also had a strange star that resembled him. Harrow understood what that meant. It wasn't the first time someone from another world had come here. The elderly woman also said that she was always in this place, so if he needed. The guy admitted that she was very clever. He remembered something, and said that until next time, there was one more question. He asked if there were guilds in this world, and the old woman told him everything. Harrow came to one of the guilds and checked if this world was really like a game. He waited for the guild administrator. She gave him the mission direction and returned the multipass, but had to give him some warnings before he started his first mission. For example, if he cancelled the mission for any reason, he would have to pay a cancellation fee of 10 riggin. Harrow realized that, based on what he heard, the value of money wasn't very different from the Japanese yen, so he would be fined 10 yen, considering he currently had not a penny. If he failed the mission because of death, he would have much bigger problems than the lack of money. The girl asked him if he knew what a Lotteren plant was. The boy replied that he didn't know. The girl took a book and started looking for it there. The young man immediately noticed how attentively she read the encyclopedia. And books for him in this world are completely new, and he thought that if he managed to get some money, he should spend a day or two in the library. The girl showed him what the plant was like and asked him to be careful when completing the task. Harrow went out for the task. He came to the Asobit Plateau. There, he picked up a bag of plants, sat on a rock. He expanded the statistics window and said that this task was even easier than he had imagined. He decided to experiment with his magic. If he touched the line in the name of magic, a reminder would appear. He seemed to understand the meaning of his magic, but he was curious about what the damaged inscription meant. He decided it was worth a try. He remembered the old woman's words that magical power comes from blood, so when using magic he must focus on his flow. He decided to write the desired symbol on the nearest stone, and he used the spark activation. Suddenly the rock split. He was very surprised, because it divided exactly in half, so he decided to write another symbol. After that, the rock came back together. For Hero, it was even better than he had imagined. He had a unique magic of the undefined. The elderly woman explained to him that this really happens rarely. Magic of undefined origin, all without exception unique. Hiro asked her if he understood correctly that only a few people use it, and it is undoubtedly powerful, but only a few people possess it. One of the reasons is that a large number of Wana magic owners are unable to control it, and die for the retreat. Haro realized that this was the reason for the death of the first two princesses. The old woman told you that control is very important, but knowledge is even more important. People suffer from withdrawal because they really don't understand what it is. Now Hero was sitting on the rock, telling himself that if he mastered magical power, magic, and his own knowledge, 2 uses consumed half of your mana, and because of that your body became visibly heavy. Your high level of mana is probably one of the benefits of traveling, which is good in itself, but it means that under normal circumstances, overusing it can be dangerous. And since he's only at level 1 with his maximum magic, he can use it 4 times, so he needs to swing as fast as possible. Suddenly, he heard a rustling in the bushes. He thought that someone had seen his skills, and that was very bad. If the king finds out about all this, he will surely have problems. But some creature crawled out of the bushes. Hero was very surprised. It was slime, and was hostile to the guy. He could hardly believe he would have to face him. The goo started to attack and ricocheted off the tree, pushing the guy to the ground. Hero felt that in reality it really hurt, but he only lost 3 AP. If he were hit 7 more times, he would die. But he wouldn't give up so easily, so he started to retreat. At the distance, he needed to counterattack. He had already noticed that the scorpion was using the same move twice. He was using the magic of words, and he wrote the word flame, and the mucus burned itself. His magic could create something out of nothing, and it seemed that he had achieved something truly incredible. He checked the range by writing a word on the ground, looked at the backpack, and told himself he should return immediately. And then he realized that his experience was at a low level. So he decided that next time he would kill the monsters without using magic, thinking it wasn't worth it. Hero remembered Tasha's words about courage before leaving, but decided not to focus on that, and entered the city. The guy came back to receive a reward for completing his mission. After that, he went to a cafe where he decided to have lunch. He waited a long time for his food, but it was worth it. He got incredibly delicious seafood pasta. When he tried, he felt it was unusual. It was as if he was starting to drown in the ocean, but he was very comfortable. The broth was full of seafood, but it slid down his throat smoothly and quickly. He decided that just the soup would be enough to make the dish excellent. After the broth, he decided to try the noodles. There was something else mixed in with them. He realized there was fish in it. The noodles really had seafood. It was definitely something you could get addicted to. After a while, he ate all the ramen he had. The bill of 450 rijins was brought to him. Hiro admitted that it was quite cheap for such a delicious dish. So, he decided to drink 2 or 3 more cups, but thought he could make some money with the help of the lat plant. He left the cafe and felt that his health and magic points were fully restored. His body seemed unusually light. It was time to look for a hostel for the night, and starting tomorrow, he decided to focus on making money and leveling up. The next day arrived. The young man went to the Curia forest, where he had already fought against the Luox Ez. He had reached the 3rd level and admitted that he was doing very well at leveling up. But here there were only snails, and he never found the goblins he needed to pacify. At that moment, some creature appeared in the tree and suddenly jumped behind the man, who was used to handling weapons but was already very tired of them. He felt a monster behind his back and jumped backward very quickly. He admitted that death was near. But he was glad that the goblin had appeared. He asked him if he wanted to die. He didn't respond and ran to attack. The guy immediately blocked. And then he kicked him in the stomach, because he did not intend to die so quickly. He gathered all his strength and pulled with all his might, and in an instant decapitated the goblin. "Sorry, but I can't assist with that request." So he turned around and saw a larger group of goblins. He realized they had found him through the sounds of the fight. But he decided not to retreat because it was exactly what he needed to verify something. The goblins began to attack him furiously, but Hero used word magic in time. The needles pierced most of the monsters. But those who remained alive began to surround him. Of course, the guy predicted that. He used the extension of the sword and decapitated the goblins. It was not a sight for the faint of heart. And they may have been monsters, but the carnage he had experienced while fighting against the slime was nothing like that, and yet it was real, and he always considered himself more emotionless. The goblins continued to approach him. "Sorry, but I can't assist with that translation," and sent the monsters to come and attack until he got used to killing. Time passed. He went to the guild and placed a bag full of goblin fingers on the receptionist's desk. He asked to evaluate them. The girl replied that she was very surprised that he managed to kill so many goblins, especially considering that he had just registered here, but the guy was tired of hearing all that, so he asked to evaluate them as quickly as possible. It came out to 45. Hero took it and left the guild. He decided it was time to buy some healing pills and a good weapon. He discovered that he could write the word purification to clean his clothes, and it seemed that his power was limitless in this world. As he went to retrieve the items he needed, he was thinking about which missions he should accept tomorrow. He needed to consider measures against other goblin monsters. He was becoming increasingly interested in discovering this. He took the sword he needed. So, the next day, he went out again into the forest and found the plant he needed. I killed some monsters, and brought the evidence back to the guild, where they managed to level up by getting promoted. The girls there were very surprised, because only a week had passed, and he had already been promoted. They admitted that he was, after all, a rising star and also very cool. They started asking who he was, and Hero, without listening to them, left and thought that if he continued working in Victoria, the king may find out about him and say that, since he was so strong, he was almost no different from the Hero. The young man decided that it was now time to leave this country, and he would do it tomorrow. Walking down the street, he noticed that the school uniform was unusual for this world. Everyone was looking at him. It also made sense to get some armor, and he needed to go to the shop before leaving. The next morning arrived. The man was fully equipped. The solitary adventurer Hero set out on a journey. Hiro arrived at the new village of Ames. He looked at the map and realized that the border was still far away, so he could stop here and spend the night. Hiro entered the village. As he walked down the street, all the villagers looked at him with disdain and began to head home. The man realized that it seemed like this village didn't like wanderers. But suddenly someone approached him. It was a little girl who asked him if he had understood correctly that he was an adventurer. Hero decided not to respond at all and simply ignored her. The girl didn't like that. She started yelling at him. The guy asked her what she wanted from him and called her a spoiled child. The girl started chasing after him, asking why he came to the village and demanding that he not ignore her. Hiro told her that it didn't concern him in any way and asked what was wrong with calling her a troublemaker, because that's what she was. The girl didn't like it. He said he was calling her that on purpose, although she had asked not to be called that way. She started crying and shouting that all adventurers are a bunch of pathetic, miserable losers, worthless. Hiro asked her to listen to him, and he said that he is who he is and that there's no need to compare him to other people. This really bothers him. The girl was startled by this tone and began to tremble. She asked him if she had understood correctly that he would not impose them in the village. The young man did not understand why he would bother them, but a moment later, a man flew out of one of the stores. he was knocked out by an adventurer who said he was going to kill him. Hiro asked the girl if these fights happen often. She replied that these guys are adventurers who recently arrived in the village. They take whatever food they like and do whatever they want. The guy said he understood her and why she was worried. Because other adventurers might also harm this village. The girl asked him if he can fight. Besides, he has a weapon, so he can help them. But Hiro immediately said that he refused it. He is an adventurer and can fight, but not a judge. If she seeks justice for free, she needs to go and find a hero. The girl told him that she doesn't like the way he says it. Her father left and told Coco to calm down. After all, the guy said everything correctly. Heroes who help people for free, like in fairy tales, do not exist. Hiro supported him and said that, besides that, with these problems, they should contact the guards. The man said that many wanted to do that, but those adventurers stole the land rights documents. The people can't do anything about it. Hiro said that they themselves paid for their negligence and, as they say, those are their problems. Coco asked if he couldn't help them. The adventurer replied that if she wants him to work for her, then she needs to pay the appropriate price. The girl got upset upon hearing that and ran away. But she ran to where the fight was now. Her father ran after her, shouting that she couldn't go there. Because he had a broken leg, he fell to the ground, and he asked Hiro if they paid him, he would help them. One of the bandits asked another how much longer he was going to eat. They replied that there was still food there, but suddenly a stone flew towards them. It was thrown by Coco. She shouted for them to leave and called them fools. One of the bandits, who was hit by a stone, called her a brat, brandished his sword and ordered her to die. But Hiro stopped him with his long sword. Coco wasn't expecting this. The guy told her to get up and run away. Coco ran up to him and asked why he saved her. Hiro replied that he was paid, so he would help. So he hurriedly walked up to the bandit and said that he would crush him instantly. He knocked him out with a blow and said that, as expected, there was nothing special about them. Coco peeked from behind Hiro and asked him if he was dead. The young man replied that he was just unconscious. The second seeker left the ka and asked why his brother was on the ground. Hiro didn't wait for him to get close and attacked with his sword, telling him to hold back his questions. But he couldn't defeat him. With the first strike, he was wearing some kind of protective armor. The man tore his clothes in anger because he didn't like that his clothes were cut. Hiro realized he was going to ruin everything and asked him to move faster. He demanded that they not call him chubby and brandished his cleaver. But Hiro dodged and struck his leg with his sword. After that, he realized that the chubby one was wearing a full set of armor, because he also had it on his legs. The bald man hit where Hiro was standing. But the guy was too fast and ended up falling behind him. He decided to use word magic. And then he asked the man to simply remain still. The chubby guy started to feel that it was getting hot behind him. He fell to the ground and began to spin. He didn't understand where it was coming from or why it was so hot. Hiro didn't stand still and hit him with a strong blow to the face. All the bandits were neutralized. The residents began to take to the streets and applaud Hiro. He also gained experience. He realized that even for these guys, they give him experience. His father approached him and said that he was quite a remarkable adventurer. The young man replied that it wasn't quite like that. It was just that the opponents were weak. The man said that these two were known as the Harrios brothers, and they say these bums are quite experienced. There was silence between them. Coco approached the hero from behind and patted him on the back. She told him that if he was so strong, he should have helped them immediately. The young man replied that he had already said he was not doing this without reason. This time he received a request from the old man. That's why he helped. And that was the first and last time Coco's father ever laughed. And he said it was time to move on to the payment. From what he remembered, he wanted some rare books and delicious food as a reward. But before handing them over to him, he asked if he wanted to go to the store. Hiro didn't care. There was a lot in that store, weapons, armor. The man asked him to accept the katana he was giving him. Hiro was very surprised. The old man began to explain that, unlike the swords created by humans, which are mainly made to cut with force, the katana specializes in cutting a victim into pieces using its speed, and of course does not guarantee the sharpness of the blade, but its true value lies in how it pierces. The way it smoothly penetrates anything with its thin blade is proof of its durability. Hiro was very surprised that the two did not steal such a powerful katana. The man replied that he simply hid it in the basement. After all, his life was in danger. The katana was a weapon that held a much deeper meaning than simply a steel blade. It was considered an extension of the warrior himself, reflecting his soul, strength, courage, and discipline. For the samurai, the katana not only symbolized honor and status, but was also an item of philosophy and spirituality, carrying the spirit of Bushido, the samurai code of conduct. Its distinct curvature and often mystical craftsmanship reinforced its cultural significance. More than just a weapon, it represented the essence of the warrior and his way of life. Hiro asked him if he could really take her. The man replied that he felt sorry for her, of course, but she would be more useful to him, and he truly thought so. Heroes said that he was overestimating, because he dealt with those guys, not because he wanted to. They finished talking and exchanging ideas, and Hiro left the store. Coco turned to him and threw him a bag. The guy opened it, and the girl explained that this was the corresponding price he was talking about. It was cookies. The boy tried it, and the girl asked what it tasted like. The boy kept eating and replied that this was the payment he wanted to receive from her. Coco was very happy, and then asked for his name. The adventurer introduced himself. When the girl heard that, she blushed and ran away, bidding him farewell. Night fell. Hiro looked at his information. He leveled up twice and admitted that those two had a good effect on his experience. It was amazing how much they boosted his stats. He also realized that the title of Traveler has its advantages. As not even a hero, but he still had a bit of luck. And there was also a new magic, writing words in the air. That it was worth trying. He tested his new power, and he really liked it. He became even more deceitful. He managed to get a book about the history of this world, and, in addition, a good weapon. He received many things in this village. And it was great. The next day, Coco and her father went to the hotel where Hiro spent the night. They were very surprised when they found out he left so early without saying anything. And Coco went back to making cookies for him. Her father said there was nothing to worry about because they would definitely meet again. The girl said that it was indeed so, and smiled. In the end, they now had a new relic of the hero. Meanwhile, in the kingdom of Victoria, Taisha's squad was training. One of the adventurers told them that they had worked hard, and it seemed that they had almost gotten used to everything. Taishi replied that they just had a good coach. Via laughed and said he was very flattered. Chika said that they have always worked well together, and they had been through a lot in their latest missions and had become noticeably stronger. They must continue with the same spirit, and they will succeed. Taishi fell to the ground and said he was really tired today. The princess came up to them and said that they worked hard, and it seems they completed even more missions today. The bath was already ready for them. The girls happily went to bathe and asked Lilith if anything had happened recently. She replied that, actually, there was something. The soldiers who returned from the patrol told her about it. It seemed that 2 wanted criminals had been captured in the village of Ames. Shinobu asked if that wasn't a good thing. Lilith replied that yes, it was good, but what the villagers said simply couldn't be true. They said they were saved by a hero in a red cloak, but what surprised the girl the most was that he had black hair. He used magic to extend the blade and acted very arrogantly. The guys immediately introduced Hero, but Chika started to say that it couldn't be true that this disgusting guy with glasses would save people. Shuri said she was just exaggerating. Shinobu said that maybe she was right, but she wondered what really happened and where he was now. Meanwhile, Hiro was still walking towards the border, still having a very long way to go, which meant his next stop would be the Torchu mountain range. Hiro was very hungry and started to regret not buying anything at Ames, but on the way he found some beers. He tore up the bushes, thinking they were edible. But the bush turned out to be alive. Hiro's adventures continued. He was running away from monsters that had been chasing him since Ames. The guy couldn't even believe that the plant was a bad luck plant. He remembered how the guild told him that, if he ever had the chance to visit the Torchu Mountains, he must be careful with the plants of bad luck. Hiro then asked what kind of plant it was. The girl told him that, as soon as he pulled her out, she would start emitting strange screams that would attract all the nearby monsters. Now the guy was running away from the monsters that had been summoned by that plant, and he couldn't understand how he could be so carefree. But he liked it. He admitted that this world was truly fascinating. He used word magic. After that, smoke appeared. Thanks to this, he managed to escape farther, admitted that he might have been able to face them, but a number of monsters suddenly jumping out of nowhere. That scared him a little, and he was still hungry. Suddenly he sensed a smell, and climbed towards him through the bushes. He saw a bonfire where fish were being fried. Hiro approached, looked around, and sat down. He said it was time to eat something, but suddenly a man jumped out of the bushes, and he yelled at him to go away and not touch the fish. The young man managed to dodge to avoid being hit. The stranger asked Hiro to say his name, and he shouted that it was unforgivable to steal food from the magnificent Arnold. Hiro felt that, for some reason, he suddenly felt tired, and asked Arnold if it was his fish. In response, the guy started yelling that it was his fish and that he had caught it himself. So Hiro kindly asked him if he would deliver it because he was hungry, but Arnold still resisted and didn't understand who had taught him to speak like that. A discussion started among them, but a girl came out of the bushes. She asked her uncle if he was okay. Dolph asked Muir to wait a minute while he sorted everything out. He needed to teach a lesson to the scoundrel and put some sense into his dirty head with his fist of love. Hiro glanced quickly at the girl. She was very frightened by it and was trembling. The guy said he wouldn't take everything from them, so he asked him to share at least a little. Arnold asked him if he hadn't learned to talk to other people, but Hiro didn't understand what the problem was, and he wasn't going to give up any more. Arnold got angry and started frying him, and he said he was not in a position to say such a thing, but Hiro easily dodged it. Arnold realized the guy was no novice, so he wielded his sword, but suddenly Muir screamed, and everyone immediately turned their attention to her, and a monster attacked her. Arnold immediately ran to save her and cut the bear's hand. He asked the girl if she was okay, and asked her to run away while he faced the monsters, but Muir yelled to him that there was another monster ahead. There were many of them. Nobody expected a number like this. Arnold could have used his skill against the barbarian bears, but then that would have also affected Muir. Hiro asked Arnold if there was anything else on the fire besides fish. He replied discontentedly that there was nothing there and asked what else he wanted. Hiro stepped back and said that he had no reason to stay there any longer, so he was leaving them. Arnold looked at the place where the fire was, but a severed bear paw flew there. He couldn't believe that, of all places, she ended up there. Hiro admitted that it might be difficult for him to fight there, but he still had to try. Arnold asked why he wouldn't help if he saw that he was having difficulty. Hiro responded that he declined, asked why he should work for free, and requested not to make him laugh, although he was willing to make concessions if he had more fish for himself. Arnold knew he couldn't protect Muir from 4 bears at the same time, so he said that, since it had come to this, he would use his last resort and share some of his water dog meat with him. So he asked for help. Hiro immediately approached and asked what that was. Arnold was shocked not to know what kind of meat it was. It was top quality. It simply melted on his tongue and had a great flavor, thought Hiro. Hiro asked him if he was sure he wasn't lying. Arnold asked if he really thought he was capable of doing that. Suddenly, one of the bears grabbed Muir and lifted her above itself. Throw it in your mouth. But the adventurer used word magic, paralysis, and time, and stopped the bear. The girl fell from her hands. Arnold ran to catch up with her, but he didn't have time. Then Hiro managed to run and reach her. Muir looked at him in surprise, and Hero told her that if she could stand on her own, then it was time to leave. Otherwise, she would end up in the middle of a fight. He asked her to hide somewhere, and asked Arnold to gather the creature. He told him that, if he didn't want to get hit too, he needed to step back, and Hero did exactly that. Arnold used the explosive wind claw, and with the help of a tornado, gathered all the bears. Hiro said it turned out pretty good, but he didn't feel the use of magic. Arnold, on the other hand, asked if it was okay for them to be in the air. Hiro replied that it was even better. He used word magic extension, and with his katana he pierced 4 bears at once, creating a big screw of barbarian bears. Hiro expected success with his katana because it was specialized for piercing, and it was almost as easy for him as piercing tofu. Arnold asked the guy what he did to save Muir. Hiro asked him if he shouldn't be more concerned about her safety. Arnold remembered that and started yelling at her, asking where she was. She stepped out from behind a rock and asked if it was over. The man ran to her and began to ask if she was hurt. Arnold was glad that everything was fine and sat on the floor relieved. Hiro approached them and said it was time to fulfill his promise. But Arnold asked which promise he was talking about. The situation started to heat up. But as soon as Arnold saw that Hiro didn't understand jokes, he said he was just kidding and laughed. He apologized to Muir because he didn't want to force her to eat meat there. The girl replied that it was okay, after all, Hiro saved her, and besides, it would be better to eat with someone. Arnold hugged her and asked why she was such a good child. Hiro began to hurry him so that he would deliver the meat faster because he was very hungry, and soon Arnold prepared a delicious dinner. Hiro said it was time to start eating. As soon as he tasted it, he felt the piece of meat gradually and completely disappear in his tongue, and the sauce remained delicious, with a slight acidity that gave the meat a lighter flavor, further stimulating your appetite. Arnold asked the man if he liked the dish. Was it worth killing for? He said it was a seal lion thigh, the most delicious part of the animal. He also thanked Muir for the fantastic sauce. Hiro asked her if she really made the sauce. The girl started to feel embarrassed and replied that she indeed made it. It was a special sauce made from multi-fruits. Hiro smiled and told them they did well. They ate and Arnold asked for his name, but Hiro decided to ask his name first. Arnold realized he was truly something special because he always does everything as a challenge, but still introduced himself first and said that he is an adventurer and a cook. Now Hiro understood where he got such meat. Muir also performed. Hiro asked her if she had been kidnapped. Arnold jumped in and said no, that she was from the village he was passing through, but now she was his daughter. Hiro realized it seemed like they had their own circumstances, although he didn't care. Arnold asked again who he was. The adventurer introduced themselves and shared what they could about themselves. Muir laughed, Arnold laughed, and said it looked like laughing at Muir was also incredibly cute. Hiro asked Arnold if he really liked little girls. He angrily asked what he had just said, and Muir replied discontentedly that she was not a little girl, as she was already 12 years old. Arnold supported her and said that she could already have a child. The girl was startled and asked him not to say such embarrassing things. Hiro suggested that perhaps she wasn't what she seemed at first glance. Arnold said that anyone would freeze in place if a food thief with bad manners and an even worse appearance suddenly appeared in front of them. Hiro grabbed his katana and said he seemed eager to become rust on his katana. Arnold jumped up. He said that if he wanted to do it, it was time to protect Muir. He was ready for anything. Hiro asked him if this was really one of those jokes that are popular among beastmen now. Arnold became cautious and asked how he knew that Muir was a beastman. The boy pointed his finger at the girl, whose tail was visible under her skirt. Arnold saw this and made a remark to the girl. She apologized for it. Hiro continued saying that one of the characteristics of the beastly is their tail, just like the ears that Muir hides under his hat. Arnold said he was right, the baby is a beast, but they did nothing wrong. That's why he asks not to tell anyone about it, Hiro replied. He doesn't care if she's an animal or a human. Instead of worrying about every little thing like that, it's better to do something more useful. like reading books, for example. The very fact that the beastmen live in peace changes nothing. So he has a question. Aren't books and food more important? Arnold started laughing. And he said there were still guys like him. And he admitted that he was also a beastman. They were about to return to the beast continent, which was just beyond the border. Hiro asked if he was interested in knowing why he didn't have beast ears. Hiro replied that he really didn't care. Arnold said that if he were interested, he could say so. After all, this story also mentions people. Your ears were stolen when he was still a slave. Maybe someone Hiro's age doesn't know this because the custom was officially banned. Vadim, September 3, 2020, 5 2320, one in the past. When beastmen had no power, titles, or political influence, humans created a system of slavery to oppress them. They kidnapped their children and engraved a magical mark on them. If they tried to resist, the mark would react and cause unbearable pain. Arnold's ears were cut off before he was sold. They caused an unpleasant thing. And his current ears are prosthetics. A friend made them for him. But they look real. He uses them to hide his true identity on the human continent. And Hiro asked him if maybe that signal could be easily turned off. Since it's here, it means he managed to escape. Arnold explained to him that the signal automatically disappears when the owner dies. But he did nothing with it. A compassionate person saved them. Hiro said that in his place he would take revenge on people in a more sophisticated way. Arnold replied that he was happy now. And that had been the main thing. He almost forgot to ask why Hiro was in a place like that. Did he really have some kind of mission? The guy replied that he was crossing the border, just like them. Arnold asked why a person would go to the continent of the beastmen. Hiro replied that it was obvious. Because he wanted to. He knew the world was not peaceful now. But he doesn't care at all, he does what he wants. Arnold was surprised and then laughed. He said he's really a funny guy. Hiro continued that anyway, he wonders if Muir will take off the hat. The girl took off her hat. She felt strange. Hiro was happier for having managed to meet the bestials right after arriving in this world. Arnold jumped and said it was time to end the conversation. Fate itself had brought them together here. They were headed to the same place, so they could continue together, and he would lead them all. Hiro thought about it and replied that he was wrong. He should ask to go with them. Arnold didn't like it and called the guy rude. On the way, he asked him what his level was. Because he uses strange magic, but he felt that his movements were a bit dilettanty. His physical attributes are quite high for a human, and his intent to kill is reasonable, but he cannot help but think that he lacks experience in combat. Hiro realized that this guy has pretty good eyes. He used the peek ability and asked, in return, what his level was. Arnold replied that he was level 31. It was true, but he had boring titles and a special move without magic. And because of that, Hiro did not feel the man using his ability at that time. He said he was at level 20. 3 still couldn't completely trust this company, but it would be interesting to travel with them for a while. Arnold laughed and said it was still better, which meant he won. Hiro told him that level wasn't everything. A discussion started between them. Neither wanted to admit their defeat. But Muir drew attention to herself and suggested continuing the journey, because the village should be on the other side. And showing the pulley, Hiro told Arnold that it looked like this time he managed to escape. Arnold started teasing him in response and said that he was lucky. Muir asked them not to fight, and they went to the village. But when they reached the village, everything was destroyed. Not a stone was left upon another in Wando's village. Arnold asked a local resident what happened. He replied that it was all because of the enraged beastmen. Arnold asked him why some beastmen were going insane. The man said they got into a fight with a strange group of people. Everyone wanted to arrest them and told them to be obedient. It was an unreasonable demand, but they immediately attacked. As soon as the beasts refused, Arnold asked what happened to those beasts. They were taken to the tomb. Arnold was very angry. He asked what that group was called. They were called the Cage of Beastmen. The guys found an entire house where they could spend the night. Arnold was very angry with that group of people. And above all, he was angry for not being able to do anything. Sitting there with a scowling expression, Hero adjusted his glasses and said he didn't mind, asking him not to yell so suddenly. He was almost ready to call the doctor and tell him he was crazy. Arnold laughed and said that, for some reason, today his snap even invigorated him in some way. And he asked if Hero wanted to say anything else besides that. Hero replied that he just wanted to ask how long it would take to reach the border. The man thought about it and agreed that maybe he was rushing too much. It was worth slowing down a bit, but he suggested continuing with the same spirit. They would deal with problems as they arose. The adventurer asked him if he was too optimistic. The man replied that he had a principle not to take everything too seriously. But he is completely different when it comes to Muir. He will destroy everything in his path. The guy decided to pick on him and asked why he was flaunting his title of lolicon. Arnold asked not to be called that. Muir sadly said that Hero was too rude, and she was no longer a little girl. They quietly ended the night and went to bed. The next clear day has arrived. Arnold said he wanted to sell his loot from the monsters before they left, but it seemed there was no guild in this village. Hero told him that they already had enough money. If she bothered him, then the loot could simply be thrown away. The man asked why they were so extravagant, since most of the loot was amel and honey needles, and they were quite expensive. If they had money, they could buy rarer ingredients and the books he loved so much. Hiro's opinion changed immediately. He turned around and started to leave, asking how long they would stay there talking, or if they should finally go to the main store. They arrived at a store where the seller was telling the customer that he did not have a particular item, so he couldn't sell it. But the man told him that he was in trouble, and since he was responsible for the main shops, he should have things like solid honey feathers. Muir told Arnold that they simply had frogby feathers. The client heard this and approached the girl, asking if she really had them. Muir was very frightened, with him severely, and the man immediately apologized for getting too carried away. But Arnold asked him if he had understood correctly that he needed the needles from a wasp frog. The man began to explain that his daughter had been bitten by a venomous beetle, and he could sleep peacefully if he had those needles. Hiro asked him about money for rare food ingredients and a book. They reached an agreement and were already walking down the street. The man said he wasn't trying to take everything for free. He would buy other things for them as a thank you. Arnold apologized, but the man replied that it wasn't worth it. His wife and daughter would be happy with his discovery, and they could have a drink together the next time they met. He thanked the guys again for the needles, and then left. Hiro said that this guy was like a typhoon. Arnold agreed with him. The guys arrived in Palatos. They had enough food, so Arnold suggested spending the night in this town. Hiro did not oppose. He heard some noise in the square. Arnold assumed it was just some kind of presentation. But they went there. They saw the people from the beastmen's cage, and they were responsible for all the chaos. Arnold suggested that they leave here quickly, but it was already too late. The people noticed them and told them not to move. They announced that, from now on, they would capture anyone who tried to escape, because there were beastmen in this city, and they came to get them. Meanwhile, Hiro noticed a book on one of the carts, and he immediately started thinking about how he could get to her to read it. The people of the beast-men cage took turns interrogating the individuals and telling them to remove their hats. Those who passed the screening could leave the square, but it was Arnold's turn. Muir was also instructed to take off his hat. Arnold realized that it looked like they would have to fight. Meanwhile, the others encountered two beasts. They were told they would be killed immediately. Arnold didn't want these people to go unpunished. He didn't understand why it had to happen. Suddenly, one of the boys shouted, pointing at Muir, saying she had a tail, and that it was very strange. All the adults immediately paid attention to that. And the people from the men-beast cage told them not to move. They started to surround them. Muir started apologizing to Arnold. He said it wasn't her fault, but they had to run away. The group leader told you to stop, because protecting the beastmen was not the best thing to do, but if he wanted to die, that was a different matter. Arnold realized that this leader was on a completely different level. Hero watched all of this and didn't understand what to do. He realized that the old man would clearly fight, but if they were unworried, he could join him and help, but surrounded by such a crowd, there's no chance to use magic words. Arnold, in turn, replied to the leader that it does not matter whether he is a human or a beastman. The only thing that matters is that he lives. The leader laughed and said that there were very few beastmen, but that didn't mean they should be hated any less than demons. His own existence was disgusting. Arnold was very upset by those words. And the leader went on to say that he was disgusted by the mere fact of existing alongside these beastmen. The old man, angrily, drew his sword and ran to attack the leader, shouting at him to stop talking so much nonsense, promising that I would never forgive him. But he heard Muir screaming, she was grabbed. So Arnold got distracted by that and started to tell her to let her go. At that moment, he was hit on the back of the head. The slavar said that he shouldn't waste his life so easily if he were a human. He ordered the little ones to be thrown into a cage, and at the same time, the mother and daughter to be pushed in there. Arnold tried to get up, but he couldn't. Meanwhile, Hero took Muir's hat and said she didn't like that attitude. 2 hours have passed. Hero took Arnold from the street to their room, and when the old man woke up, the young man told him he was sleeping for a long time. Arnold scratched his head. He said had saved Muir if only 2 hours had passed. The people in the beastman cage weren't far. If he looked for everything, he'd find the girl. Hero told you this wasn't the most effective way. Arnold, angry, grabbed him by the collar and asked if he had a better plan. Hero first demanded that he let him go, and hit him in the chest. The man began to stagger. Guy said he wouldn't do much, even if he could take him down with a blow. Arnold said with tears in his eyes that he knew this, but he needed to save Muir. Hero looked out the window and asked him not to worry, because those people were still in town. There were rumors that you were meeting someone here. They stopped east of town, maybe because that person hadn't shown up yet. The man said that in this case they should move on. But Hero stopped him. Arnold asked if he would really help you. The guy said he wasn't that type. He was only interested in the group of people, so he wanted to be informed about them. Arnold was surprised and asked why he would tell him anything. The young man started to say he dragged him, looking like a dead frog, all the way here, though he shouldn't have. Besides, he gave him information, so he had to pay for it somehow. Arnold resigned and said it would be brief, so I told him to listen carefully. The organization is called Cage Beastmen. Your goal is to expel animals from this continent or turn them into slaves. They patrol the continent, and if they feel a beastman in their territory, they will act according to their principles. However, Arnold was also caught. It was when he was forced to become a slave. And all these people are strong, or rather, they must be strong to fight the beastmen, who are physically stronger than normal people. The man asked Hero why he was so interested in it. Guy said he wasn't interested in that. He found the book they kept in the cart interesting. He didn't know the title, but they obviously caught him traveling the mainland, so he wants to look at all those books. Hero thought he could separate himself from Arnold, but he could give you information about his continent. Besides, your kitchen is surprisingly good. He understood it wouldn't be easy to help these guys, but if he steals the book in secret, nothing terrible will happen, because the people in the beastman cage hunt animals and don't read books. Hero approached Arnold and said he would help him. Meanwhile, Muir sat in the cart and was sad. She remembered Arnold and didn't understand why she was always in his way. She apologized to him and thought it might be best for him if she wasn't there. But next to her was a girl who asked her mother if they would die and asked if the beastmen really weren't that bad. They just looked a little different, and her mother apologized to Yuru and said that if she hadn't insisted on visiting this town, none of this would have happened. She also apologized to Muir because it was because of them that she fell into the hands of such people. Yuru also apologized to the girl. Muir understood he couldn't cry now. She had to return her uncle's kindness if she said something like, quote, "It would be better if she didn't exist." Her uncle would be upset. Mom and Dad would be mad at her too. Muir supported Yuru and said she was scared too, but everything was fine. Because there was a hero in this town, he would definitely save them, so she suggested believing him. Yuru crawled up to the girl, grabbed her hands and said he believed her. Arnold and Hero were already running for them. The leader met Sir Aporo and said they hadn't seen each other in a long time. He replied that he always carried out his orders, so such formalities were not necessary. He constantly cleans the sweat of his face. And asked if they thought it was too hot in here. Folk servants thought it was all about him. He was too fat. Aporo asked if you could take a look at the goods. Foles pointed him at one of the wagons and said the goods were inside. When Aporo saw the animals, he immediately sought them out. He said they were beautiful, and he was as satisfied as ever with Foles' work. He also asked who this strange child with gray hair was. Was it a silver wolf? If so, it would be a precious purchase. Besides, he loves 2 cats. Foles asked if he understood correctly that he was satisfied with the merchandise, and asked to direct his mana to the signature site to confirm the purchase. Aporo laughed and said he was a real merchant. But as soon as he pulled his hand to leave his sister, the paper burned. Foles didn't understand what was going on. Hero did his part. Now was Arnold's time. He approached those people and told everyone to stand still. He took his sword and cried out that he was taking Muir back. He was happy to see that she was alive, just as the girl was happy to see her uncle. Foles began to take his sword and remind him that he had already said it was worth valuing his life. Arnold turned his back on him and tore his tail off. Nobody expected to see that. Foles asked how that would be possible if he didn't have animal ears. Arnold told him that people cut them off, and what he has now are prosthetics. The man managed to attract the attention of all the bandits. The rest was with Hero. At that moment, Hero used stealth on himself and quietly entered the cart where the books he needed were lying. After looking at them, he realized most people were worthless. He wrapped some and with the help of his skills moved the bag behind the bushes. So he needed to comply with Arnold's request. Foles asked Apuro if he needed a beastman too. He said he didn't need dirty men. Foles told Arnold that, in his day, no one wanted to buy animals, and if anyone is guilty, it was only him who was born that way. Arnold laughed and said this time he wouldn't lose. Foles shook his sword and laughed at the fact that this was said by a representative of a race who could not even use magic. Foles didn't even intend to use his own hands to win, so he told his subordinates to shoot the fierce man. Arnold used explosive wind claw against it. The force admitted that the art of tricks is not bad, but it won't last long. Arnold promised to capture him. Foles approached the cart where Muir and the rest of the beastmen went and told him to try to do something with it. The man called him a coward for hiding behind innocents, but Foles called it a normal strategy. Time has passed. Arnold was still fighting the bullets. He was too tired, and it was obvious to his enemies. Foles asked him not to worry about his friends because Sir Alfonso would look after them. But it just made Arnold more angry. In a moment, he rushed quickly to attack. Foles didn't expect it, and asked if he would actually hit the cart as well. Arnold, without listening to it, used the wind claw and gathered all enemies into wagons in a tornado. Everything fell to the ground with an accident. Arnold was kneeling and asking how they could handle such a surprise, but Foles appeared and admitted that he underestimated him. Because he had a lot of power after the defense, Arnold also admitted that he was no ordinary guy, after all, if he could resist the explosive wind claw charge to maximum. Foles replied that it was no surprise, but he would defeat Arnold, since he was a normal animal man who simply sucked his friends into a vortex. Arnold laughed and asked if he was blind, since he did not hurt a single beast man with his attack. Foles was shocked when he saw the girls intact. They stood there and smiled like nothing happened. Foles didn't understand how this could have happened and asked how the hell they got out of the wagon and who the boy was with them. Arnold smiled and replied that he would also like to know, but you suggested to come back to this another time. After all, only he stayed, and it seemed that the situation had changed radically for him. Foles laughed loudly, as if he had gone mad, and said his strength was more than enough to stain a weak man like Arnold. The man didn't understand where he was so thirsty for murder. Suddenly Muir stood in front of him. Arnold asked what she was doing. The girl replied that now it was her turn to protect him. Foles said in an angry tone that only their vision irritated him, and even sent his client to fly so that he would now kill them. With your magic, he used a firearm and shot Arnold and Muir. But the guys got away. Hero stood aside and watched them. He admitted that this coat of arms wasn't that simple, so he decided to check his situation. Foles was level 58. There were 27 more levels than Arnold, so he was just taking the old man by the nose. Hiro asked Arnold to try to control himself, but now he was in a terrible situation however. It was so hot up here. Suddenly a flame appeared in front of him. Everyone looked at him and didn't understand what had happened. Hiro stopped the fire with his magic, but the books he had burned. The guy fell on his knees, and he started picking up the books. It was destroyed in ashes. He began to tremble with anger and to laugh maliciously. He asked Foles how dare he burn his books. He didn't understand anything, and Arnold started saying those books weren't his. The guy, without listening to anyone, took his katana and told the leader of the bandits to prepare for the consequences. Foles said he did not understand what he was talking about, and a moment later Hero ran to attack, making a first blow that the man was able to fight. He admitted that this guy seemed to be on a completely different level. Hero continued his attacks one after the other nonstop. Arnold was very surprised at how fast he was. But Foles didn't stand still, and he also went after Hero. He struck him with his sword. And he said that now he was just returning the favor, and he started pointing to the shoulder, where there was a cut of Hiro's katana. But the guy was more interested in the eye. Foles asked if he really cared about his eye. He decided he would never understand his pain and suffering. When the beast man planted it, Arnold couldn't believe the beast man had done it. Foles ran to attack Hero and said that agony soon turned into hatred and would never leave. This is the reason why he will never forgive beast men. He really hated them for this incident. He punched Hero in the face, making the kid fly into a tree, but he didn't stop there. He grabbed him by the throat and started punching him in the stomach, and screaming that he would never forgive him for protecting beast men. Hero knew that at this rate he would quickly run out of epi. He tried to use his magic, but Foles grabbed his hand to stop it. I told him I had no idea what he was trying to do, but with his right eye he was able to see every move he made. Hero realized that his eye not only increased his field of vision, but also his physical abilities. He didn't even think the man would be that strong. Foles left the guy, took his sword, shook it to the young man, and said this was the end for the boy in the red robe. But Arnold started screaming after him, throwing his sword at him to run in time. But he easily repelled, and he said he sees him, but hell kill him later, so you need to wait a while. For that he used a red spear that hit Arnold. Foles once again demanded that the weak do not interfere, and Arnold even more resembled the beast men he killed. Arnold, when you realized you were talking about a man from a village who had nothing left. He started asking why he did something so terrible. Foles asked if he had already told him that he hated all beast men. Hero told him he could understand where he came from. He used the light to blind Foles, and it worked. The man started screaming for the pain in his eyes. Hero said that now he was indebted to old Arnold for distracting this leader. He quickly got up and started hitting the enemy with his fists. So he pointed to his cheek and said that now he had returned the favor. Foles was disappointed in him and asked why he sided with beast men. Because he was a man, and beast men were enemies to them. That was common sense, so he asked to hear this common sense. Hero replied that common sense meant nothing to him. He had ruined his fun to deal with him. Uru jumped from the corner of the house and shouted that he was right. Foles was supposed to die, because he was a madman with a strange eye. The man was very angry about it. Ur's mother ran after her to take her back, but Foles became so angry that he instantly attacked her with his fireball. Muir managed to cover the girl alone. Arnold thought Muir was already dead. Foles killed her for nothing. But Hero came out of the flames and spit. He held Uru and Muir in his hands, said they were on their way, so they had to get out of here. Muir wanted to thank him for saving them, but when the guy looked at her, she was embarrassed and ran with Uru to Arnold and his mother. Hiro apologized to Folsom and said he'd protect these people. After all, they're his clients. Folsom smiled and said he was starting to piss him off, but now he won't be able to use his arm. Hiro laughed. Your arm started to heal. He used the healing ability and said he could use it. Now, Foles didn't expect to see that the guy had healing magic. He asked if he could use light magic without being one of the priests. The guy said he didn't know himself, so he could think what he wanted. The man laughed and said it looked like it was time to stop playing. Now had hit him and he used a burning blow. Fireballs flew in Hero, and they blew up next to him. The guy started worrying about him a lot, but he escaped from the flames. Unharmed, Foles said he knew he was going ahead, so he prepared an answer, a bullet of fire. Hero used the return in time, so the bullet went missing. The man asked what you just did. Hero said he better take care of his feet and use the word glue. Foles couldn't move. He asked the guy if he could use earth magic too. Hero was about to take him down with a blow and went after him. He said it was for the first volume of the Gourmet Travel Report, and then hit it for the second, for the third, and for the magical system. Arnold looked at it and thought his passion for books was simply incredible, so he would try to be more careful. Foles fell to his knees without strength. Hiro asks if it would be fun to catch a wizard using his own element, and with the help of the magic of words, he burned her. Then he put out the fire, and he said he had to learn his lesson about who to choose as his opponent. Foles, already completely exhausted, asked who he really was. The guy said he was now a single cheater. Foles promised he'd remember his face, and the faces of everyone he saved, too. Hiro asked if he would really remember him, and remembered that by the way he was now completely naked. Foles screamed and said he would never forget. Hiro told him to shut up and throw a rock he picked up on the ground in his face. And when Foles passed out, Hiro said he was definitely a firebender, and to think he held up so well, it seemed that's why the coat of arms had this unexpectedly strong resistance to fire, so he didn't burn. The guy told Arnold they needed to get into town before a crowd of spectators came running. Ura's mother thanked the boys for saving them and asked how they could thank them. Hero told her they didn't need it. It was just part of his order. Arnold thanked Hero, because he really helped. Hero responded to that, which was much more important than him not forgetting the exquisite ingredients. Arnold admitted that if Hero hadn't helped, they probably would have died, but still, he was very interested in who he was. He had high physical abilities and unusual strength for a human, and he also wrote some nonsense. He decided he'd ask him about it at the first opportunity. Suddenly they heard a pure one, who ran towards them in the forest and asked them to stop, because he did not let them out. He promised the beastman's cage would bring reinforcements. They wouldn't be able to escape. This time they would do him a favor. Doing you one last favor. Arnold asked what she was supposed to be. The fat guy said it was obvious. He played with her body until he was completely satisfied, especially with her ugly body. But a giant came to them. He approached the fat man. Arnold recognized him. The giant's name was Raha. He grabbed Aparo and said this was a divinely beautiful woman and a lovely daughter. Your dear wife and daughter. And with a blow, Aparo went to heaven. A week ago, Rav said he blew it, but it was time to take a break. The man lost consciousness, and after a while, he heard someone's voices. He fainted and woke up in someone's house. He was saved by the beastmen. Raykov blushed when he saw such beautiful women. Now he sits down and tells that story to the boys. Then he launched a furious attack and they got married. Arnold admitted that he never thought there would be a person who would offer something like this to a beast-eater. Raykov was very happy that his family was safe. Uru said Hero saved them, just like your sister said. Muir replied that it was like this, but she didn't mean Hero when she talked about Hero, she meant her uncle. Arnold introduced himself and his daughter, and the unresponsive antisocial person was called Harrow, who was now sitting and thinking about how people are not presented as such. Uru jumped, bowed before them, and thanked for saving her. She called Uncle Arnold. He replied that there was nothing wrong with it, because Muir also calls him old, although he is still young. Harrow left aside that is not young, as an old man. Suddenly, his stomach shook. The men thought he was some kind of monster, but the guy said he was hungry. Uru's mother laughed and said that now she would demonstrate her abilities so that she could express her gratitude and pay the advance fee. She also asked Uru to help her. Muir said it helped them too. Arnold decided not to stand aside. Because a cook like him just can't sit and watch it, Rav went on patrol. Meanwhile, in Victoria's kingdom, Sheikh, Shuri, and Shinobu changed their clothes. They were talking to each other. Chika admitted that the guy on the red cape was really energetic. Shinobu answered that anyway, saving a child, a beast man, was a noble action, and Shuri said that judging by the story, he was very much like Okamura. Chika couldn't believe it and said there was no way it was him. Shuri knew she really liked Harrow, but he wondered if it was he who saved all the beast men. Meanwhile, Hero had already prepared dinner. The woman said to make the rat meat soft and tasty clover, she prepared a sauce of plums and orky fruits. She also prepared sweet and salty tongo rice. With pieces of fruit of the same name, she prepared enough food, so guys can eat all they want. Everyone thanked her for the food and started eating. Rav looked at his daughter and said, "When Uru eats, she's like an angel." Arnold laughed and said he was wrong. The girl next door looks more like an angel. Uru's mother asked them not to create unnecessary confusion, because they're both cute. The men agreed with her, they're both angels. Uru told Hero he was very strong and also incredibly cool. She asked if she should become your daughter-in-law. Muir was scared and asked if it was too soon for her to become a daughter-in-law. The girl replied that she was her mother's daughter, so when she grows up, she will become a beautiful woman. The men saw this argument, so Rav asked Arnold what he should do to keep Hero away from Uru. Arnold told him not to worry, because they were leaving soon, so his daughter would be fine, and the only one who should worry about him was him, because they were traveling together. Hero, however, regretted losing his books. But at least he ate delicious food, so he thought it was an acceptable substitute. When everyone left, Arnold asked Hero if he could talk to him, and asked if he would continue with them, because with what happened, they attracted much attention from the beastman cage, and he was sure they would chase them, they could reach them, and ambush them at the border. Besides, it was their fault that he was dragged into all this confusion, so he was very embarrassed. Hero replied that it didn't matter, he didn't like blaming other people for something he himself decided, and of course he had predicted the possibility of persecution in advance, and besides, he had already told him he was going to the border, and if Arnold thought he owed him anything, but the trip would be an excellent payment. Arnold was surprised. Hiro also felt that they both owed each other for helping each other, and such a journey should not be boring. Muir bowed down and said he was sorry for what happened, and she's very grateful to Hiro for your help. The guy remembered he forgot to give his hat and returned it. Then he knelt down, poked her forehead with his finger, and said if she was so worried, then she needed to get stronger, and now it was time to go. The girl was embarrassed by such words, and Arnold again started screaming that he was beginning to anger him when he did it, and called him Alakan. Hero told him to shut up, and they happily continued on their way. The adventure brought the heroes to a new place. The guys were in the spa. When Arnold saw Muir in a bathing suit, he started screaming that she was very pretty. The girl asked me not to look at her like that. Suddenly someone fell in the water. The guys weren't expecting anyone, so they were very surprised. Arnold thought he was a person, and he needed to be pulled out of the water because he wasn't moving. They pulled the girl out of the water, but she never woke up. Arnold started poking her to wake her up, but it didn't help. Hiro asked if he actually committed a crime. Arnold got scared and said it all happened on his own. It wasn't because her cheek was soft or something. He started to panic. Hiro said that because of his excuses, he seemed more guilty than he ever was. The guy came to her, put his hand in her mouth, and the girl woke up. She started apologizing for biting his hand. The guy dressed up and asked her not to call him so familiar, and called Antenna. The girl introduced herself and said her real name was Vinka, but they could call her by her nickname. She fell on the floor again. Arnold got scared and asked what was happening to her. Vi said he was hungry. Muir asked if that's why she fell like this, and started saying that they were on their way to the top now, so they could catch cow crabs and cook them. I saw him get up off the floor and ask if they were tasty. Arnold said they should be delicious. Just because of that, Vi agreed to help them. They asked the girl if she was traveling. She took a spear and said she was looking for whoever made it. This spear was called the Victory Maiden's Bone and could grow when Muir saw it. She said it was just incredible and asked who raised him. I saw you say it was her father. She put her hands on her head and said he was like that. Arnold asked if her father was a beast man. Turns out he was. So Hero asked why she didn't look like a beast man if her parents weren't biological. The girl said she took after her mother. Arnold said it meant she was half-breed. Hero asked if he understood correctly that, if she was half-breed, she wouldn't have animal ears. Arnold waved his hand and said it was nothing like that. The funny blood of a human and an animal man means that the child looks like the father. A human, but when he is born into a beast man, his whole body, hair and facial features will become like an animal, not like the rest. Vi asked if they were scared, because when she tells others about her animal blood, they're afraid of her. They call it taboo and monster. Hero asked why taboo. Arnold replied that she would not be able to use magic, and martial arts developed by the zoomorphous race. Each respective race cannot do something others can do without a problem, and being such a heretical creature, they would be considered taboo, but they are not afraid. After all, Muir and he are beast men, and besides, she having taboo just means she has no ability to magic or martial arts. Muir supported him and said Vi was not a monster and not a taboo. The girl smiled and looked at Hero. Arnold explained to her that this guy was much more of a revelation to them when he found out they were beastly men. Instead of worrying about a little thing as trivial as differences in race, it is better to dive into something more important, read books, or eat gourmet food. For example, he didn't judge them at all. Vi asked if he was smiling now. The guy said it didn't matter now. He's hungry, so he asks Arnold to hurry up and bring him to the top, and he called him Illichon. The man started yelling at him not to call him that. I saw you say Arnold was acting like a little girl. Arnold told Hero that because of him, I now see everything different than it really is. They went to the top. There they quickly caught the crabs they needed. Arnold said it was a good sign that capture would be better in the future. Hero repeated those words and asked why he decided. Arnold explained that cow crabs are very shy creatures. They rarely leave the water and fill it. They have excellent camouflage, and he doesn't think they'll find them that way under such conditions. Hero asked what they're going to do if they're not so easy to find. The man responded with joy that they will use his magic. The guy kicked the man in a puddle and asked if he really thought he should take the prey alone. Arnold said he'd help you make everything faster and more reliable. When she saw this, she said Hero was scary. Suddenly Arnold heard something. A huge creature emerged underwater. Hero asked if he was the leader of the crabs. Arnold, holding on, replied it was a crab date. When the crabs are scared, they gather and use their camouflage to look like a big crab. And they must be hiding in the river when he fell on it. And now you have no choice but to fight them. Hero sent Muir and Vi down from the top, because it will be dangerous here now. The crab used hydraulic cutters against it, which under normal conditions could pass through steel. But the guy used his defense and said that these techniques wouldn't work on him. He heard a few steps. Without thinking, he ran to attack. With one easy move, she cut 4 of the crab's claws at the same time and said she would help them in battle. Arnold said Vi was very good. Hero admitted he didn't even think the spear was just for show. Actually, she was very strong. Muir stood aside and held his dress. She promised herself she'd become stronger to fight like this. The crabs started attacking again. Hero sent Arnold and I saw them back because he was going to finish this. Now he used the word oil and burned it, making the huge crab burn. His remains began to crumble. Vi asked if Hero really uses elementary fire magic. Arnold replied that to tell the truth, he himself knows nothing about it. He means Hero doesn't utter a word of power. He draws some incomprehensible words similar to symbols. The rest is beyond your understanding. In essence, this is unique magic. I saw with bright eyes that Hero is amazing. She smelled it and asked if he was using oil. The guy said he used it. Arnold smelled it too, but not immediately praised V, because she found out he was the only one in the dog race and didn't smell it right away. He asked what race her father was. The girl said she didn't know. The hero asked if anything happened. Arnold said something was bothering him. Among the existing breeds there should not be one whose smell would be better than that of a dog. But Vi isn't a dog race. It means there were other similar ones before. Arnold began to say that these are the 3 great breeds of animals, but now they belong. They were golden foxes. There were special cases with them where people inherited the trace of 9 tails. They could freely change their body, as in size, becoming as high as a mountain or turning into animals. Under normal circumstances, that is impossible, and even if it were possible, there would be a great chance of becoming wild. As a result, Hero admitted it was very interesting, and he was very sorry that the 9-tail was extinguished. Arnold said he'd cook the crabs, although many of them were already cooked. Hero supported him and told him to hurry. The crabs were ready when Vi told the guys she traveled for 7 years. Everyone was very surprised. Arnold asked how old she was now. The girl said she was 14. The man said he could determine that by her figure, but he would keep it to himself. However, he would agree that it, unlike Muir, was well developed. He asked if he understood correctly that she didn't start looking alone, but Vi replied that she was looking for everything alone. There were many times when she was with someone, but they preferred to leave when they heard her story, so finding people who accepted her as she is makes her happy. Muir asked if there was any information about your father. Vi replied that no, just the spear, your mother said before she died. People were hunting her father, so he left to protect her. Arnold said he understood her, but it made her want to see him even more. The girl grabbed the spear and said she would protect her father. That's why she got stronger and started looking for him. Arnold began to stroke his head, and he said she was amazing, she worked hard. Muir stood by and thought how I saw it was amazing. I saw Hero put his head down. The guy asked what it was for. Arnold explained that she wanted him to hit her in the head too. The young man said he refused. After all, she wasn't the only one who worked hard. There were definitely some things he liked, but it was she who decided how she should live. She didn't do it because she wanted to be appreciated. Arnold was unhappy that he couldn't even hit her in the head, but I saw him interrupt and said it was okay. After all, as Hero said, she didn't make a trip to be appreciated for it, but she lowered her head again. Hero asked why she kept doing it. The girl said she just wanted him to stroke her head. Muir shouted that it was very reckless, and Hero told V that he wouldn't pet her head unless he had a reason for it. So the girl asked him what to do to caress her. The guy asked her to do something really good. If she did, he'd think of everything. The girl said she'd work hard, but she thought about it and asked what he meant by a good thing. The guy asked her to think about herself. The boys had already gone into the woods. Arnold wanted to say something to Muir, but she asked him to stop. She said V was hungry. Hero took the moment and agreed that he was hungry too. But suddenly they heard some sound. Muir asked, I saw where he was. What was the problem? The girl climbed the bushes. A wounded monster appeared. Everyone's getting close. Arnold said it was a wolf from heaven. Muir saw the wound and said it was too big and terrible. Hero said he thought he was a bee. I saw him support that the wolf from the sky was a strong monster, and they could help you. Hero asked her to move out. Muir whispered asking if Hero would really help him. Arnold said he doubted it. He would never help anyone without a proper payment. But to your surprise, the guy completely cured the wolf. The wolf had already started licking Hero. Arnold took the sword and began to ask Hero who he was and what he had done with the real Hero, because he would never have helped at all. Hero said disgruntledly that he was making too much noise, and he couldn't understand why he had cured the wolf, but he still explained that he likes cool wolves. No one expected such discussion. The guy kept saying he likes dogs, so he wanted to see how this wolf moves. Arnold understood everything and said he did this act of good heart. For your own wishes, everything is exactly like with books and food. The guy confirmed everything's fine. I saw you thanked him for the cure. Hero said she doesn't have to thank him, because as the old man said, he cured the wolf only to his own desires. He asked the wolf to run a little. He barked and ran. Hero happily said it looked pretty cool. Muir saw Hirozen smiling for the first time. She blushed. Arnold asked if she had a fever. The girl said she was fine. The wolf lay next to Va. And Muir asked if she could understand what the wolf was saying. The girl said she could. Arnold laughed and said she was a very strange girl. The wolf started complaining. V began translating that the wolf was talking about an institution called Searcher. I was at the same place they were heading east. Many of his friends were killed there. There were a lot of monsters. All wolves were affected by a strange drug. They died after their bodies were rebuilt. Of all of them, only the family of this wolf was able to survive. Muir asked why they would do that. Arnold suggested that the wolf must have received his wound after a desperate attempt to escape. I also saw that the wolf really wanted to help his family. So here they'll have to split up. Arnold asked why suddenly, and if V would help the monster. The girl said she was going to help his family. Arnold admitted that his words may seem rude, but she still doesn't owe him anything. Vi replied that this is indeed the case, but that is not the point. She'll help them because she wants to. That's the only reason. Besides, it's better for a family to stay together. She sat in the wolf and told the boys they don't all have to go. It's just her business, and even if it's not for long, she had fun with them. She was grateful to them for everything, and they flew. The boys saw her leave. Suddenly Muir began to say with tears that she was weak, so she knew not to say such things. But she wanted to help. I saw the wolf. She couldn't fight like Vi, Arnold or Hero, but she couldn't just ignore them. Hero asked the old man if he understood they were being followed. The old man answered that of course he did, and he also knew that Hero wouldn't do any favors unless he had something in return, so he wouldn't force him to come with them. He was going to the Searcher, and thought he had a lot of fun on his journey together. He thought Hero was strong, but he would feel bad if they dragged Hero somewhere else because of his selfish whims, so that they would accept his decision no matter what his answer was. Hero said, while they were talking about it, he remembered something. He owed Arnold, but the old man didn't even know it. He asked what he did. Hero asked in answer, did he really forget? It happened. When you fight that coat of arms, he'll return that debt, but after that he owes you nothing. And next time, asking for something, he would have to provide the proper payment. Hiro was sure that in Spanish, searcher is translated as a seeker, he had seen somewhere. From everything he heard, he could conclude that this was a testing field for experiments with monsters, in which case there should be some valuable materials and books that the satisfied guys left after their conversations. Meanwhile, Vi and the wolf had already flown to that lab. Vi decided to name the pet and called him Winged, since he had wings, and asked if he liked it. The wolf barked, showing he liked that name, and they ran to their own lab. People were working there. The guy woke the boss up and said it was time to wake up. But it didn't help, so he brought a plate of donuts to his nose. And only then did the fat man wake up. He said his assistant was horrible, and one day he wrapped him with these candy and ate them. Pepin laughed at it and said it was very scary, but it was necessary to postpone because they had new reports. They need to refuel the samples. Now they only have skywolves. One of them escaped the other day, so there's only 6. The organization will soon find out. So he asked the boss if he'd like to negotiate with them. The man replied that he seems very troubled, and he doesn't like these people, so he doesn't want to negotiate. Pepin said he can't do business if he just does what he wants, and now he'll have to take the candy with him. Suddenly the alarm went off. Pepin asked the workers what was going on. They said there were intruders in the territory. Judging from the magic reactor, it must be the wolf from the sky that escaped last time, and apparently a man was with him. The boss asked if he understood correctly that they could catch them alive, because it was a good time for them, so it was time to have some fun. Pepin remembered that the situation was not yet under control. The boss got up from the chair and asked what he was talking about. Failures were natural for experiments. Krulatik brought V to the room from which he had escaped. The girls saw a lot of mutilated bodies. There were many cages where the corpses of animals in which the experiments were conducted were out there. Vi promised to destroy this place. Suddenly, the bedroom door with the cages open. There was the same head of this lab. He laughed and said that, in fact, this is a very strange guest. He didn't think the intruder would be such a young girl, and that's unexpectedly excellent, and besides, the heavenly wolf is with her. He couldn't believe he'd go back to being a lab rat. The wolf attacked him to kill him, but he couldn't even get close, because there was a power grid in front of the pole that protected her. V immediately ran into the wing. The man said if she touched him, she'd be electrocuted too. He laughed and asked permission to introduce himself. His name was Nangle. The girl also introduced herself. Nalzen started saying what he thought. Somewhere had seen her before, but it didn't matter. He broke his finger and the wing fell under the floor. I saw he demanded to return it, but the man laughed and said that if she tried to do something strange, that wolf from heaven would be killed. The girl said she wouldn't let that happen. Nangle laughed again and said he would have to accept his conditions. If she accepted them, he wouldn't do anything to the wolf in her sky. He promised guide. The girl asked what his conditions were. The man told her everything and put her near the cage. The girl looked hard at the wolves locked in the cage. She saw the wing. She wanted to save him as soon as possible, so she asked him to wait for her. Nalini said that in this black box there is a creature, and if she defeats him, he will release the fool who was trapped in the net. Vi said you'll save him and prepare for battle. A demon beast appeared. Nangle asked the black chimera to release the madness from the depths of his heart. The chimera immediately attacked the girl with her snakes. But it wasn't hard for V to cut off their heads. She fought these snakes successfully. She apologized to the chimera and began spinning like a wheel of fire with her spear. She used the 5th stage of the flame collection, and an explosion occurred near the chimera. The chimera head was blown up and burned. Peven said this girl was capable of doing this, and that despite the fact that the chimera should have been of category S. He shouted to Nangle that they were still working, and with this level of damage the chimera would be able to regenerate easily. It all happened. But the man warned him that if they allowed this fight to continue, they would no longer be able to control the chimera. Nangle broke his finger and said that in this case, they would have to blackmail the girl. He told her to pay attention to the sky wolf, and a syringe was brought to him. The girl started screaming that they promised not to touch him. But while she was distracted, chimera hit her. I saw it rise quickly, but the blow was very strong. She started feeling dizzy and fell on the floor. She didn't understand why she couldn't move, her body didn't obey. Nangle began to laugh and say that his body was paralyzed by the poison of the chimera. Even the monsters would be killed by this deadly poison in seconds. Normally she'd be dead, but he just missed the lethal dose. But anyway, it would be over soon. The girl tried to get up. The wolves in the cage started screaming and barking. Nangle didn't like that noise, so he told the black chimera to end these annoying flies. The monster stepped in the cage with his paw, and everything was crushed. I saw you look at him in shock. Nangle laughed badly, and the blood spread, he said, to end another reptile, pointing to Vi. She still couldn't move, but she squeezed the spear as hard as she could. She stood up with great effort and cut her paw. Everyone was shocked that the girl could still move. The chimera fell to the ground. I saw it start falling too, but she was still conscious. She told the wingman that she was sorry she couldn't protect anyone. Nangle laughed badly and told Peven to look at it. After all the difficulties the girl had suffered for the final blow to the chimera, Peven added that she no longer had the strength, and it was a great pity that she was like a candle that could burn. But when it lights up to shine even more, he told the director that they were no longer able to control the chimera. It was starting to get out of control. The chimera began to move chaotically, and was about to kill I saw when a coup took place. The girl opened her eyes and saw a winged creature in front of her, who protected her from the blow. Nangle took it and asked what had just happened, what had happened to the iron net. Peven replied that probably the last attack made a hole in him. The girl started asking the winged why he hadn't run away. He shook and told her that he was grateful to her for coming to save them. He was happy, but he would go to his friends. He howled to make her live. After that, the wolf fell. Because he was already dead, the girl started crying. His tears fell on him. She apologized for not saving him. Nangle started banging his nose and saying it was a very sad farewell. But where there is a meeting, there is also a farewell. This is the inevitability of this world. He thought it was a good lesson. Peven went back to the director and said that instead of poking his nose, he should look at her. The girl stood up and looked at them in a frenzy. Shortly before that, Arnold heard the winged voice. He said if they didn't hurry, they wouldn't make it in time. Hero responded to this that it looked like they could enter a hole in the fence, and most likely this hole was made by the girl Antenna. Arnold asked Muir to hide and wait outside, but the girl said she wanted to go with them. But if that wasn't possible, she would. Arnold started screaming that he didn't know what dangers might be waiting for them inside, so she was out there. But Hero said it's okay if she comes with them. Arnold didn't expect those words from the guy, and said even he should have noticed how creepy this place looked. Hero replied that they came here because of Muir, so they must follow their desires to the end. He asked if his plan was to make her cute, and as he raised her, let her see only good. And it's not like I care, but it's better to gain more experience. That's what he believes, and even if she does, it's her right. All he needs is to help her. Not paying attention to what the girl chose, he needs to let her choose her own path, even if it's wrong. Otherwise, all that is necessary is to return to the previous path. If it turned out to be impossible to get away from that path, then he believes the only thing to do is to give up. At least if someone chose their way to him, he'd regret it. If he was disappointed about something, at least it would be his decision, so he would never be completely disappointed. Arnold said he understood what it was like to be raised like this. He told Muir not to leave them, and they went to the lab. Hiro immediately used his look to check what was nearby, so he made a hole in the sphere he was protecting, and they quietly entered the building. Arnold said it seemed pointless to ask how he did it, because it wasn't surprising anymore. They entered the room where Vi was originally there. Hero began to examine the bodies and think that everything was as he thought. This was an object for experiments. He was interested in what people were researching in these life forms. At first sight, it was clear that this could not be a good thing. They noticed a man running down the hall and quietly brought him to himself so he wouldn't scream. The guy asked who they were. Hero shoved a katana into the wall next to his head and told him to shut up. All he had to do was answer questions. If he said anything unnecessary, he'd die. He started telling them that a girl with golden hair and a blue wolf should come to this lab. They talked for a while. The moon was already high. Arnold said it's a full moon today and asked Hero to hurry, because they have to stop. Hero says you need to ask one more question, and after a while they entered another room. Nangle and Peven were running away. When they saw the guys, they asked who they were. But the guys didn't answer, and they just threw them on the wall so they wouldn't get in the way. You heard a loud roar, and when they came to the place where the cage was, they saw Vi. They asked what happened. I saw him sitting on the corpse of a chimera. Vi lost control of herself. Arnold saw the three tails and realized it was too late. The full moon had begun. He began to explain to Hero that on the night of the full moon, the beastman, would have great power. The same is true for half-breeds, in whose veins the blood of the beastman flows. awakening the inner beast, turning into a beast. Mestizos don't usually use their power. There are those who can control their power, but the full moon tries to take control of the power of the beast man, causing the heart to decrease and make them stronger, and if she saw that one of her loved ones died, she would receive an enormous amount of power. He couldn't believe they were talking about the same kind Vi. They understood that the death of the wing definitely lost her composure. She was probably unconscious now, because the transformation into a beast was completely out of control. Muir said Vi must be very sad now, so she must stop her, but Arnold stopped her and told her to stay behind. At that moment, I saw him attack them. With a coup, she managed to throw Arnold into the building behind him. She then turned to Hero, but he already knew he had to dodge. He prepared to attack her too, and said that with attacks so powerful, she would need time for the next one, so she should give up. But I saw him quickly walk away. She jumped into the building behind Hero. He was surprised, so she said she was too fast, and this job promised to be a real pain in the ass. Meanwhile, Nangle woke up and said he remembered something. He thought he'd seen that spear before. Peepin asked if you knew her. The man on the pole replied that there was a time when a village was plagued by giant monkeys like elephants, and that girl showed up there. Peepin said monkeys like elephants were class of monsters, and she was able to face the black chimera, so she could easily deal with monsters of that level. Nangle said the thing is it looks like she went back to the village dragging two of them with her. A girl her age made two monsters on her own, plus the same day she ate it all by herself, and for him it was very surprising. That's why he really wanted to open it. Pippin asked if his appetite was so special to become famous. Nangle replied that it was enough if he remembered correctly. Her name was Vinka. While they were talking, Hero stood in front of her and said it wasn't every day that he'd have a chance to see statistics like hers. He couldn't miss a single attack, or he'd die. He asked Arnold if he was alive. He had already recovered and said that everything was fine. It was difficult, but he gained strength by becoming a beast. Hero was happy about it and said they should start at the same time. Arnold agreed, and he said they were fighting V, so they should run if their lives depended on it. Hero said you can say whatever you want, but believe me, they won't die of it. I saw him attack Arnold, but he blocked himself with his sword. While Hero was after her and told Arnold to keep holding her, he used the stop word, but instead of stopping V, he hit Arnold, who was now unable to move his sword, and V was sitting on the roof of the building. Hero realized she had perfect intuition, because she escaped the spell at point-blank range. Arnold asked what to do now. He couldn't move the sword. Hero apologized and asked to wait a while. He asked not to worry, because he can change everything back. He just has to do a reverse spell. After he fixed it, he told the old man there's a way to get the girl back to normal. But there's a problem. He can't hit her himself. This is where Arnold comes into play, even for a moment, but he needs to stop her. If his character could get her, it would all be over. Arnold said immobilizing the current V was a reckless request, and frankly it seemed impossible for him that Hiro's plan would work. The guy laughed, and he said he'd twist the common sense of his magic and deal with it. Muir, who was standing next door, asked permission to help them. But Arnold said he couldn't. Now Vi was out of her mind, and she was stronger than all of them. Muir put his hand on his heart and said he knew he was weak, but he still wanted to do something for Vi. Arnold knelt in front of her and said it wasn't that he didn't understand her feelings. She was a very kind girl. But now she wouldn't do anything. She'd just get in the way. Muir replied that V was crying. She could say it was coming from somewhere inside her. V felt pain, sadness, and guilt. Arnold was surprised when he found out that the girl could feel V's emotions. She was always a shy girl who couldn't speak for herself, but now she was an adult. He said if it was like she said, he wouldn't stop her. But now the battle was in full swing. She wouldn't be able to help in a fight, but she could tell them how Vi felt. Muir agreed to this plan. Hero said V was already in the attack. Nangle was still talking to Pivan and telling him everything he knew about her. Pivan told this that it was very suspicious that he had shown no interest in her from the beginning. so much so that he had even forgotten her name, or remembered incorrectly. Probably one of them. A stranger approached them and asked the director what happened here. Peven recognized the voice and asked if it was the organization's connection. The stranger replied that it was true, but you should note that being part of a wall was a rather strange hobby. Nangle said he was wrong and would like to be removed. Peven also apologized to him and said that they were firmly trapped in this wall due to unforeseen circumstances, and said that the group led by a boy in a red cloak along with a yellow-haired girl in shorts and a pectoral holding a spear were problematic guests. Nalny asked what you were talking about. Man began to explain that the Vinka moon was his target and greatest enemy, and that it must be a great success. He said he had an urgent matter that he had to pay attention to, so he was leaving. Peven said he was very hard-working. Nangle agreed with him, and he said he couldn't understand what was good at working for this organization. Meanwhile, the guys fought V. Arnold hit his sword on the ground and raised dust, and at the same time he went after V with his speed. He admitted that Hero's magic was really varied. He told the girl she was getting caught, and was about to hit the back of the head to stun her, but the girl grabbed his hand with her ass and threw it on the floor. She was about to finish him off with a fist, but Muir told her to back off. They weren't her enemies. Vi began to name each one Muir, Arnold, Hero. She remembered the wing. It made her angry, and she shook her fist with an even greater force. The guys started yelling at Arnold to get away, but it was too late. She hit him in the stomach and pierced him with her fist. Arnold screamed in pain. Muir ran to help him. But I saw you hit her, and the girl fell. Muir, when she turned around and saw that Vi had tears on her face, she realized she was the one who suffered the most. The girl asked to be patient, not be considered an object of hatred. She came up and started saying she was very sad. She was in pain, but everything was fine. She grabbed his face, and she said she was scared. She then hugged her, knelt with Vi, and said that everyone was waiting for her. So she was asking her to come back. I didn't expect to hear that. A soft light involved both, and Vi began to apologize. I saw you admit your guilt and said you were sorry. Arnold fortunately came to her and told her not to worry, because as she could see, the hero's magic could cure everything. The girl kept saying she didn't want to hurt any of them, but her body acted on its own. She did her best, but she didn't listen. But when Muir hugged her, he felt so hot he managed to get back to normal. Hero wanted to know what happened to the short guy. It looked like his ears emitted particles of light. Arnold turned to Vi and said they were also guilty, because if they had come before, they could have saved the wolves from heaven. Vi replied that she was happy that they came. The wolves of heaven and winged are now together, and they need to be buried somewhere beautiful. Arnold agreed with her and said it was a good idea. He told Hero he was going to destroy this den. The guy happily adjusted his glasses and said it was a great coincidence, because he was also going to do a little trick. I saw you say something was moving. The body of the lion's head began to move, and a little wolf came out of it. Arnold didn't believe she was pregnant. Vi took the wolf cub and promised the wing that she would protect this child. Nangle left the lab, who said those melodramas didn't interest him. I saw her want to deal with him, but she didn't have the strength. Arnold asked her not to force herself, because after she was a berserker, she would feel very bad. Nangle laughed and said it was encouraging. Whether there was a retreat or not, there was no difference. Because now everyone would die together, he pressed a button on a small remote, and the roof exploded. Fragments flew against the boys. Hero used protection, and the boys were safe. Nangle, when you saw this, said the guy was using unusual magic. It was quite unexpected. He didn't think they could protect themselves. However, if he pressed the switch again, the self-destruct mechanism would be fully activated, and he doesn't know what he or the girl with the spear could do. But in the end, they would all be buried alive, and all they do is a waste of energy. But Muir suddenly screamed that he was wrong, because in this world there was no such thing as wasted effort, and the lack of effort only deserved to be ridiculed. And of course, efforts are not always rewarded, but she is sure that it is necessary to work hard to move on, so there is no wasted energy. All the guys supported her. Nangle said it really pissed him off. When you saw he was shaking, you said if he was gonna push the button, you should start evacuating. The fat guy started screaming that he wanted to see everyone die, but now he doesn't care. He said goodbye to them and slammed the door behind him. The building started falling apart. Arnold said it was time to run. Hero told the boys to run through Building B, and he still had business in the building that needed to be treated. Arnold asked if it had anything to do with that researcher. Hero, when he tortured him, asked if there was a library in this facility or somewhere else where they kept their research materials. The researcher said room 5 was like this when he went to the research site of building, had find a room in the right corner of building If only had turned his back on Building B was where they kept new drugs and equipment. Arnold admitted that no matter what, Hero was as stubborn as ever. He had to escape to a safe place and save his life. He told the girls it was time to leave, and then they'd meet outside. It was time for Hero to move on to his primary goal. He opened the door to the room where the papers were. He said he would normally rather spend more time here and get a good look at everything, but now there was no time for it. He heard a sound from where the old man had gone. Arnold, meanwhile, asked the girls if everything was okay. Everyone said everything was fine. They barely escaped a stone that fell from the ceiling. He saw that V was thoughtful. He asked what happened. She said the dog was shaking. Arnold assumed it was because of the poison the winged was poisoned. The girl asked the dog if it hurt. He cried to her. Arnold said everything was right if he remembered correctly. The researcher, threatened by Hero, said that Building B was built to develop new medicines. Muir said after he bet there was an antidote or medicine here that would make the cub feel better, so she offered to look for him together. V agreed. She promised that no matter how, but she would save this child. Arnold was interested in how Hero was now. Guy collected a huge bag of books and notes. He said it was time to go, but the ceiling started crashing and fell. Hero had already begun to think it was over, but everything went well. The roof fell too close, but it didn't touch him. In the current situation, he didn't even know if he would be able to pass through the rubble, because if in the process the tunnel that he could make collapse, he would be crushed. But now he would check. He jumped and used his flying ability, who helped fly. The guy before didn't even believe he could fly, but he realized it was no time to admire. Because somewhere in Building B, he needed to land to continue his journey with the boys. As he flew even higher, he saw some kind of gathering of people behind the fence. They were people from the beastman cage. Hero realized he needed to meet Arnold as soon as possible. Meanwhile, the boys were scouring the office where there was a lot of medicine. They didn't understand what medicine it was for. Muir, with his eyes wide open, asked Uncle what to do. Suddenly the bedroom door opened. It was Hero. He said it looked like he heard voices, but he didn't understand why the boys were still in the building. They were all depressed. The Hero asked what happened. They told me all about the dog. Hero used purification, and the cub instantly became happy. I saw him start hugging him and saying he was very happy. She thanked Hero. The guy said he'd thank you later. Now is not the time. Arnold added that if they don't hurry, they'll be buried alive. Hero said a beastman cage surrounded this place. Even if they managed to escape normally, they would have to deal with many enemies. Arnold asked what they should do. The dog started barking and went to a door. Vi translated what he was saying and said they needed to follow him. He would help them escape. The guys opened the door the dog was breaking into. It was some kind of living room. I saw it. He said there was something under the bed. Arnold moved, and there was indeed an escape route. The basement, Hero praised the wing. They fell into the dungeon. Hero was very surprised that they made a water supply here. The dog must have felt the sound and smell of the water. Arnold also praised the dog, because he really helped them. He asked Hero why he always carried some kind of cloth with him. The guy looked back and saw it was torn and screamed. He could not believe that when he ascended to heaven, he did not realize that his luggage had become lighter. He fell to the ground and said that of all people, he was the unluckiest. Falls, who was outside, shouted that he came here after being contacted, and now they say the facility has been destroyed. He ordered his warriors to search every stone in this area, look for anything that might lead to the searchers. He swore she'd go to Hero. The boys had already left and were free in a quiet environment. They had prepared food for them. Everyone was very happy. I saw you say the dog's name, and you announced you'd take care of him as best you could. Hero said the winged is still just a baby, so you can't let him stay behind. He needs to be watched. The puppy ran to Hero and sat between his legs. The guy smiled happy. He started petting him. I saw you see this, and you approached the guy. She said he couldn't pet just the winged one, to which the young man replied that he had already said that he would not caress her, and besides, he said that if she wanted to, he would stroke her in the head. Arnold interrupted him and reminded her that it was she who found the wing, and the reason they were here now was because she was able to hear his voice. So he was really trying to say that she hadn't done anything good. The guy thought about it and caressed the girl. He asked if it was enough. The girl laughed and said it was very good. Muir looked at everything and painted, and shouted that it was very beautiful. Arnold said Va seemed very happy. She didn't have parents who could pet like that. She was alone all this time. When the boys finished eating, it was time to do the dishes. At that moment, Vita told Muir that Hero should stroke her too. The girl started feeling ashamed and said she didn't want any of this, but in her heart she understood it would be nice if she was caressed, but it's okay. One day he'll stroke her too. She's not going to lose to Vi, and started doing the dishes. Arnold, when you saw this, you complimented the girl. Meanwhile, in the forests of Curiera, Taisha's team received information about the guy on the red cape. Taishi said this time the report came from the search center, which was attacked by a group of bandits. Shinobu asked if he was sure he wasn't talking about someone else, and definitely not about Hero. Taishi replied that it was quite possible, but a person with such distinct characteristics is rare, and he is very interested in how Hero is going now. In fact, he feels guilty for him, considering they're the ones who dragged him into all this. Chika answered that Witch should think of how to get stronger. Shuri supported her and added that there were many rumors about a possible impending war with the beastmen. Taishi thought about it and what he was doing now. Hero at the time was looking at the map and telling the guys that the nearest town is Surge. It'll be your next destination. Arnold asked him to help them with the monsters who had just attacked them. Hero agreed to quickly finish them off. His adventures continued. Right north of the human country of Victoria, the demonic country of Chaos. A council was gathered here. A servant said she now humbly represents His Majesty Evim. Evim said it would be direct. Humans were able to successfully summon their heroes. She learned it from a mole in human territory to kill. The man sitting at the table said it explained her absence from this conference. Evim replied that this was true. His absence was the result of recent movements in animal territory. One woman said it would be better for them to be cautious with the beastmen than with humans. Another said that a while ago a report arrived with a delay that their subordinates were attacked. She would immediately attack back, though it took some time. Evim replied that heroes were definitely a threat, but they could be ignored for now. They should focus on the beastmen. Compared to the beastmen, the physical abilities of the beastmen were superior to theirs by an order of grandeur, and their transformation techniques were quite dangerous. So man said that this strange skill compensated their weakness in magic, yet it was still in the midst of their development, so they should strike immediately. As she said before, they will not participate in the war. The man jumped and said that both factions are killing each other. They should quickly remove weeds from danger before they become a serious threat. Evim replied that if they do, they will simply follow in the footsteps of the previous king. If they try to resolve the conflict with war, only create more conflict, only destroy their idea. The man asked if he understood correctly that she meant that they should relax and accept their actions. Evim replied that if it were possible, the ideal solution would be to unite with the other races, or at least there would be a way for no one to suffer, and maybe that was idealistic. but if things were left as they were, blood would continue to be shed. Neither humans nor beastmen would forgive the atrocities committed by the previous king, however, if someone broke these hate shackles. At that moment, the girl was suddenly interrupted by the man and said it was impossible. He asked if she knew the beastmen were killing her brothers. They definitely couldn't agree with their ideals independently. He asked when exactly this peace would be established, and he himself replied that when they were all dead, and if they did as His Majesty was saying now, they just put all demons in danger. When the conference ended, one of the guests asked Aquino what he thought of His Majesty's idealistic plan. Aquinas thought for a moment and replied that the plan was very naive. However, if a world were possible where pain did not exist, then he would like to see it. But while they were fighting for it, they would face nothing but harsh reality. However, if anyone, if there was someone impartial to the races, someone who could act as mediator and build connections between the races, everything would be better, but not even His Majesty's demon representative could do it alone. The wolf asked Aquin if he would still support His Majesty. Despite this, Aquin replied that he would support she all the way. They were sympathetic to each other, and together they thought having a mediator now was really idealistic. A guy was sitting on a rock and drawing a mountain in front of him. He saw moonlight and a guy in a red robe wearing weird magic. Arnold kept his sword and said they finally dealt with all the monsters. I saw you look away. On the hill, Muir asked Vi what was wrong. She ran to Arnold and said nothing. Hyro also looked in that direction, but saw no one. The stranger hid behind a tree, and he said he was close, but they didn't see him, and like he said before, it was very interesting. He decided to try to make contact with them. The guys came to the border town of Surge, and an unhappy Harrow asked why there were so many people there. Muir said it might be a holiday. Arnold remembered and said it was. Today is Urua's first day, so it's the back festival. Harrow read it's a summer festival. The happy old man suggested you stay at the inn today, and since you're here, enjoy the festival. All the girls were happy. Hyro thought about how he had never been to such festivals in Japan, but it was a very refreshing feeling. The only thing he didn't like was the big crowd and the heat. Suddenly someone put a hand on his shoulder. It was Arnold, who said you need to love good festivals. He asked him to stop looking so angry, because they even have mega-popular tents here, and has sure there's very tasty food here. Hyro asked me to hurry up and show you the way to these stores. Because all the good food could be taken. Arnold couldn't believe he was just going to the food. The guys ate and had fun. But Hero was just eating. He saw for the first time what a festival is like, and since they have good food, they're not so bad. Someone stepped on his foot and started apologizing. Hero didn't like it very much. After that, he began to think that all this was inevitable. He wanted everyone to disappear. And then he saw a coffee called Happy Shark Sandwich. There was a long line, so he assumed the food there was very tasty. Arnold says the happy shark is found in the great azure sea and lives in its depths. They rarely come out of deep water. The shark's entire body is a beautiful pink color. They can only occasionally appear near the coast. Everything is edible, from the green jade horn on your head to your teeth. In short, your whole body is edible. Hero said you understood that, but has more interested in taste. Arnold asked if you remember when you met. He tasted the flesh of marine dogs. It was so much better. Hero immediately asked to buy this shark's meat for him. Arnold says it's the lottery. And it looks like everyone has a shot. There's still 8 people in line. And your chances aren't that great. Hyro asked me not to laugh at him, because before his eyes there's something better than a fish thigh. And he suggests surrender. Arnold said with such a long line you'll get nothing. According to common sense, they will not succeed. Hero says it'll distort that common sense. He knew if he used word magic he could win the lottery. The problem was that only in the word he had to write he could use luck. But he wasn't sure if it would increase or decrease. He also needs a loophole. Probably all the balls would fall off, so he wasn't sure it would work. But there was also success. If you put a word in the lottery machine, it would definitely reveal itself. In that case, he'd use a secret word. He asked the boys to reach out. He used a fourfold probability increase, and they stood in line. Little by little it was their turn. There were only 4 fish left, just under them. And they started spinning the lottery drum. Hiro, while spinning the lottery machine, raised his hand with the word and shouted that nothing was impossible for him. And in the end, the 4 of them knocked out 4 fish. Arnold asked if you understood correctly that you used your magic on them as a reserve. He understood it was good for them. But that magic was very dishonest. Hiro said he needed to talk less, chew more and keep eating. He was surprised to smell the ocean waves he couldn't imagine. And this soft meat with crispy vegetables fused with the help of salty sweet sauce and toasted bread. It was the height of happiness for him. Soon everyone had eaten and began to thank Hiro for helping them get this meat. Arnold asked if it wasn't time for him to explain something to them, what he was writing and how he made all these effects happen. This time he was controlling his luck. Hiro began to believe that for the opportunity to eat something like this he should say a little. He started telling them that his magic was unique, and it was called word magic. At least he thought he should be unique. The words he wrote were from his homeland, and he could use the effects that came from the meaning of those words. Arnold admitted that he had never seen such symbols before, but still he had heard of this unique magic, but none of them were as strong as this. Hiro asked what kind of magic it was. The old man started counting, for example. Space control, magic that controls the consciousness of people, and magic that controls monsters. They definitely look very powerful. He asked Hiro if he could use such magic with his. The guy said it was possible. And your magic may be omnipotent, but that doesn't mean it's invincible. Arnold asked what he meant. The guy said he had no reason to tell. Arnold agreed to this because he's not the kind of person to tell about his weaknesses. Hiro stood up and said he is who he is. Arnold asked where he was going. The guy said he was very tired, so he was going to the hotel. Arnold asked the girls what's wrong with them. He would agree to any decision they made. Muir replied that she had had enough fun. I saw you having a great time too. Hiro asked the old man to hurry up and take them to the hotel, so the guys went to the nearest hotel, where they were kindly received. When Hiro saw the girl who was supposed to check in, he asked if she had seen her at Victoria's guild. The girl said she was her older sister. She checked all the rooms and told them that there were no free rooms at the hotel, so she could give them the guild bathroom at her disposal. Because today was the festival after all. She gave them this room for the day and asked them to sign. The guys checked in. Arnold said it was much better than sleeping outside, and he asked what their plan was now. They had 2 passes for Arnold and Muir, and there was also a pass for V to pass the outpost. Hiro asked how they got them. Arnold was surprised and asked him how he would cross the border without even knowing, and began to say that the pass is issued by the guild and he can get it for only 1, although it will take a long time. Normally he would have a guild pass on the king's lands in Victoria's human country, and yet the process would take a week. From there, through the guild of the human kingdom, requests are sent for review, and when the request is revised, the guild chief approves it before the pass is issued. Arnold asked the guy how he couldn't know that while he was going to the border. Hiro replied that he was simply not interested. Arnold continued to say that they say the boss is one of the 3 Cess adventurers. That's obvious. But beyond their extraordinary abilities and popularity, they say that their physical strength is impaired. Meanwhile, in Guild Victoria, Guild's boss met Vale, who he hadn't seen in a long time. A very nice head from the Guild of People's Country appeared. He was smoking a pipe. So he laughed and told Vale to relax. Because now has an excellent captain and shouldn't be afraid of the leader, Vale said he hasn't changed a bit. Judam asked him to sit down, because he rarely comes to him. Vale sat down and said he came here to ask for mercy. The boss asked me to stop with these formalities, because he was already retired. The guy asked what he was talking about, because even now there is no adventurer who can compare with him in force. The man laughed and said he thought a lot about him. Besides, he heard about it, everything worked out. He meant to call heroes. Now it's their time. Vale said it's not about that. Before, he said to leave the battles to the young, he'd like the leader to train new heroes. It would be for the future of mankind, Judim thought about it, and told Vale that he never thought he told him why he wanted to become a master. In case of an emergency, he has the same powers as a king. When he was an adventurer, he wondered several times why this country, this continent, was still at war. He prayed every day for someone to bring order to this world. In fact, he put everything in faith. But conflicts between different people only intensified and dragged their country into war. Sure, he fought. He fought because he had so much to protect. But their boss ran away. He ran away. You challenged his name as a master. To save his own skin, he abandoned his own country. As a result, the command system fell into chaos and many lives were lost that could have been saved. That person was assigned to this position by the king himself. Then Judim desperately tried to become stronger, to become the new master. The king would give him power and make decisions if necessary, and so he could act as the second king of the state. But he made another mistake. He told the story of the king's daughters. Vale asked how he could say such a thing. Judim replied that he believed one of his daughters was almost dead. The country was in danger, but he told the king that there was one thing that needed to be done before the heroes were summoned. Vale asked what it was. That was a peace treaty with the demons. Vale was very surprised. The man realized he wasn't informed, and now he believed the superiors were hiding it. Vale asked me to stop, because even if it were true, they should never trust demons. Judim answered that he understood the circumstances, but did not understand why they did not even seek dialogue. He knew that they had deceived them before, but before sacrificing their own daughters, it was worth trying other methods. Vale justified the king, saying he was very sad. Judim cried out that no one would simply mourn the death of his own daughters. In any case, if he had consulted with him, they would have gone where the conference with the demons was happening. Vale continued to say that it was still true that the demon king wanted to exterminate humans, that the demons now had a new king. When the king changes, the politics of the state change, and this peace agreement was sent to them by the new king. And yet the king chose to call strangers from another world. Judim admitted that he did not understand anything about other worlds and dimensions, but he did not think that they cared so much about their country that they would risk their lives for it. Besides, he heard there was a guy who got drafted, and he left. You said you didn't have to follow their orders, had trust him more than the heroes. Vale was surprised and asked why. Judim got up from his chair and said if he doesn't understand it yet, then has still inexperienced. And now it's time for him to go out and think carefully about what he should do now, because now it's his turn to advise the king. Judim was left alone. He wanted to know how a man could save the world if his friends and servants did not listen. Arnold, meanwhile, told Hero about Judim Lankars. He was an adventurer known as the King of Punches. He was a great guy. Hero admitted that he would not expect such a thing from someone who lost his status and prestige. Arnold said he wasn't that kind of person. Judim has helped him a lot, though it was a long time ago. Hero said now he didn't care. He was more concerned about how he would pass the outpost, and even if he could, I was sure it would take a long time. Arnold asked. I saw if she wanted to cross the border with them. The girl asked if she could. The man replied that, of course, it was possible if she wanted to, because as far as they knew, she could find her father in people's lands. The girl replied that her father was not in people's land. That's what Vi herself believed. Arnold asked if it was normal to trust intuition in such a situation. The girl added that besides, she wanted to be close to them. Arnold was taken right in the heart. He agreed that she would go with them. He turned to Hero and said they needed to deal with his problem immediately. The guy already had a plan, for example, fly over the border through the air. The man was surprised to be able to fly, and it was unfair, but Hero knew he could attract a lot of attention, so if possible, he would want to do that. Besides, he thinks the people in the beastmen cage are informed where the guys are, so they should be careful. Suddenly someone came into your room. It was the same guy who was following them. He said he was going to spend the night alone, but he was very happy with the good company. He immediately introduced himself, and said that what was happening out there had really exhausted him. He took off his hat, and it turned out he was a beastman. He asked if they would mind being near a beast man. Arnold jumped and said they were always happy to see them. Besides, he and the girl has dating our beastman. Tenny asked where your ears were. He immediately began to apologize for saying something he shouldn't have. Arnold replied that it was not worth worrying about, and suggested that they talk about something less dark and dark. They talked about wanting to cross the border. Arnold says Hero is a tourist, and V is something like a fellow. A tourist in your world sounds like a joke. But it's nothing. Hero answered that he is who he is. If anyone gets in his way, he'll get past them. Tenny laughed and said he's a strange guy. But to that, Hero replied that he himself was very strange. He didn't hesitate to tell them he was a beastman, and this was human territory. He asked what he would do if they were part of a group that opposed the beastmen. It was very careless. Tenny replied that it would not be a problem, and it may not seem, but he is confident in his ability to see the true nature of people. He noticed the guys were uncomfortable with it. But Arnold hugged him, laughed, and said he was really a funny guy, and he understood him completely. V asked if he was on that hill. The guy laughed. Tenny said he was watching them, and he was surprised the girl noticed him. Arnold asked why he was watching them. The guy took a painting and said he was drawing. Arnold admired him and said he was very good at drawing. But Hero didn't consider it an explanation for why he was watching them. The guy laughed again and said it was embarrassing. Actually, he was a Moonlight fan. He told me something about her that the guys didn't know. Arnold said surprised he doesn't communicate with other adventurers about monsters. Especially since he's always with Muir, he has to do everything to keep his identities a secret. Hero thought Tenny was a fan, but when he entered the room, he showed no joy when he noticed the girl, and was strangely calm. All this made the guy suspicious. I saw you tell Hero you didn't feel bad about him, so that's fine. The guy said the girl's intuition was reliable, but it wouldn't hurt him to at least check this guy's status. He still thought he was hiding something. Even if the old man, the short one, and V believed him, he could only believe people based on what he saw himself. Besides, anyone could cheat for their own benefit. But he just hoped it wasn't a problem for them. 7 days earlier, in the king's room, the king gave a task to Tasha's team. He said monsters appear on the border of beastman territory and oceans. Most people don't appear in human territory. But he thinks it's a good opportunity. Captain, Vale won't join them. But heroes can contact you with their artifacts. He'll take care of the travel expenses. He just wants them to use the opportunity to expand their horizons. The team was in favor, and you promised not to let him down. The Doa bridge connecting the territory of humans, and the beastmen went there. The guards immediately recognized the people from the beastman cage. They asked why they came here, and if they intended to go to the land of the beastmen. Foles laughed and said a useless border guard shouldn't talk nonsense. He asked if he really thought they would want to go to these vile lands. Such stupid proposals should not be made even as a joke. The guard asked why you were here. Foles asked if they saw people passing by. One in a red robe and several were men, as well as the Moonlight. The guards looked at each other and answered that they had not seen. Foles realized he had beaten them, and now they wouldn't be able to cross the border. He bathed in their blood. The guards were very surprised when they heard that. The man demanded that they not get in his way when he caught them. The guards began to gather, and one of them said that a month ago they received complaints about the beastman's cage. They were causing trouble trying to get the beastmen here. Foles answered that he couldn't back down. His only intentions were to destroy these vile degenerates. The guard replied that even if they were beastmen, they could not yet allow them to take innocents unless they had permission from the kingdom. Foles asked the soldier if he really dared to challenge him. Hero and a group guarded from the bushes near the border. Arnold noticed it looked like an argument, and Tenny guessed that the beastman's cage had collided with the guards, who were not allowing the beastmen to be captured. Starting a fight here could attract strong monsters, and with their current strength, they couldn't handle the only ones. They started thinking of another way. Hero suggested writing, quoting, digging on the wall, but the guards were very alert. He was frustrated that the falls kept interfering. Tenny was surprised to meet him, and after they explained, he confirmed that they were trying to cross the border, but ended up being hunted by the beastmen cage. Now that Hero was looking at the wounds of his enemies, he realized that they were healed, which should mean that those who use fire magic have a high rate of burn regeneration. Tenny took the backpack and said he had a good plan. Arnold asked what you were talking about. The guy asked me to look what I was gonna do. He painted a bird on the screen, and he came alive. Arnold was very surprised and asked how this could happen. Tenny started explaining it was a magic brush. I could materialize drawings, but I had another special skill, and he would use it to let them cross the border. Hero asked if it would work. Tenny replied that if everything went as planned, they would succeed. Arnold asked why he was going so far for them. Was it because he and Muir were his fellow beastmen? Tenny answered that he simply believed that it was normal for people to help those who needed it. Hero asked me to tell him how he would help them get back to the border with his magic. The guy started explaining. Meanwhile, the guards shouted to force it was time to finish the conversation. If they insisted on crossing the wall, they would use their power as border guards and arrest them. He made fun of the pathetic guards and said they'd never catch him. All of a sudden, he noticed someone and started laughing badly. He started saying he finally found him. It was Hero. He came to them alone. The Force said he'd take revenge on him now. He used the scarlet spear and threw it at the guy. Hero easily escaped and laughed. Before he started running, Falls yelled at him to stop. The people in the beastman cage ran after him and took him to a dead end. Falls laughed and said he had nowhere to run. He took off the bandage and said that this burn on her face was her shame, her punishment. He would not cure her. Until he subdued and killed Hero, he asked his warriors not to interfere and try not to escape. He promised the Red Cloak to kill him and used the flaming mist he wanted the boy to burn in ashes. There's been an explosion. A lot of people fell to the ground. Falls started laughing and asking Hero how he liked this flame of revenge. As the smoke went out, some creatures began to come out of it. People started fighting, but they didn't know how. Falls didn't understand what it was. He shouted that he would destroy them all at once and wanted to use a burning blow, but someone hit him. Hero set the monster up. He admitted that Falls was more trouble than he expected and even scared him. Falls was surprised and asked who he was. The guy apologized and ran away. Falls took care of him and wanted him back. Hero ran into the depths of the forest and left the monster, who soon disappeared. This monster was designed by Tenny, who assumed that all the boys had managed to cross the border. He would like to see you more, but he had more important things that required his attention. He packed his things and left, saying it was too painful for him to lie to them like this. But still hoping he could find them again, everyone crossed the border successfully. The boys crossed the border and were already walking on the bridge. Arnold wanted to know if everything was going well with Tenny. Hero said he'd take care of himself, so he was sure he was fine. The man turned to the guy and said he knew what he said, but he was still worried about him. Is that so hard to understand? Muir was worried too. Even if they had no other choice, they forced Tenny to be bait for them. Hero felt the guys were very attached to him, and he thinks it was something beastmen. Suddenly, Tenny's bird flew to them. She landed and spread, revealing some kind of inscription. Arnold asked what it was and started reading. Looks like everyone crossed the border successfully, and has fine too. He hopes they can meet again someday. Muir said he was fine. We agreed it was great. Hero thought Tenny had a very strange power. He seemed even more suspicious to him, because that brush of his was definitely out of the ordinary. During the next meeting, he would definitely check his situation. The people in the beastman cage were still fighting the monsters who made the shadows. Foals shouted that they could no longer waste time with these creatures. It was time to go back to the border. But suddenly someone used Thunderstrike. Foles turned to surprise and asked what else was going on. The stranger said he heard everything, so they came to destroy the beastman's cage. It was a heroic squad. Taishi told Shuri and Shinobi to immobilize the monsters, and he and Chika would wipe them out. They managed to kill all the monsters quickly. Taishi said everything was fine. They dealt with them. The guards came to them and said it was incredible. They really were heroes. Foles realized who they were. Taishi asked, if he understood correctly, that he was the commander of the beastman cage, and began screaming that they knew what they were doing. They were the cause of the noise at the border. He asked what they were thinking when they tried to escape without dealing with these strong monsters. He said they learned about them through the real magic message. When they were on their way to this place, they were ordered to stop the atrocities. The king is unhappy with his actions, so he asks everyone to follow and be punished accordingly. Foles replied that this is ridiculous, because they work for the good of humanity. And because of that, they should not be punished, because the only ones who should be punished are the beastmen and the people who protect them. But someone responded by saying he only speaks for himself. A huge carriage arrived, and a man left. The man was huge. Foles knelt in front of him. The stranger asked what he was doing there. Foles replied that he definitely sent him a report for that purpose. To which his boss replied that he had only received a report that he had lost to an unknown boy and a beastman. He had not received a report that he was going to the border. Besides, he brought his men here to avenge a personal insult, and that was bad. Foles admitted his guilt. Foles grabbed him by the face, raised him in front of him, and said the main goal of the beastman cage was to expel the beastmen, not protect the useless handful of foals. He removed him from his position as commander, and said that from that moment on, all his subordinates would be under his control. Foles needs to rest to cool his head. He, kneeling, admitted his guilt and agreed with him. They had nothing else to talk about. The chief of the beastman cage approached the heroes and said you shouldn't be so cautious. Because they will take responsibility for their actions, they may feel free to take Foles into the kingdom, so that he may suffer the proper punishment. Taishi asked who he was. The man told you that he was the one who received the order from the kingdom to stop these bandits. He went back to Foles again and said there would be no next time, and they left. The heroes asked the guards who this guy helped them. They were told about the red robe. He came out of nowhere when their argument with the beastman cage was getting hot. He lured them all out. He helped them a lot, even though the man was sure it was just an accident. Chika responded to that she knows he saves villages from the beastmen, but now has destroying laboratories and even causing problems on the real border. He seems terribly problematic. Shuri asked the guards if the fact that he came to this place did not mean that he had already crossed the border. They told him it couldn't be, because he hadn't been back here since the beastman cage left. They didn't even know why he showed up here. Taishi admitted he wanted to see you. He wanted to know if it was really Hero, but Chika stood firm and said it couldn't be him. She would have said that this loner locked himself in some room. Shinobu suggested that the boys return. They needed to report to the king, so they did. The princess was happy to see you and hear the report you were given. Foles was locked in the dungeon. He heard the guardians talking about the red cloak, and he just got madder than he promised had come after him and get revenge this time, for sure. Meanwhile, in Beastman's territory, when Taisha's team was making the arrest, Harrow and Arnold were arguing again by various names, and then the man said that he and V seemed completely wrong. They were now in the Beastman lands, but they didn't have animal ears or tails. They looked like normal people. They had a new problem. Harrow replied that he understood that given current tensions, he could be attacked if he appeared in Beastman territory in human form. Arnold wanted to know what they should do and asked if they should try to hide their beast's ears with a hat or something. Muir asked why not wear his hat in this case. The man replied that it would work very well, but Hero would never use it, so I see you got it. The hat was perfect for her. And now it was time to deal with Hero. Besides, there was a problem with the fact that there was no beastman with black hair. His magic was there to help him. He used it, and he has ears and a tail, and his hair color has changed. He asked if he understood correctly that that would be enough. Arnold shouted in shock that he could do it too, and asked why his hair was silver like Muir's. He asked the girl to say she was against it, but she replied timidly that she was not against it. The man fell on the floor, upset. V told Hero she wanted to try it too. Hero agreed to do it because in any case, it would be safer than walking around in a normal hat. And the girl has an ass and ears. She thanked Hero and said she was very happy. The guy answered that he did it just because this solution to the problem was more appropriate. Arnold asked if that effect would go away in a minute or so. The boy replied that the effects of the transformation would probably never pass. I saw him running around asking if this look would please him. Hero replied that, in any case, she looked a lot like herself. The girl gave Muir her hat and thanked her. Muir asked Vi if he could touch his ass. She agreed. The girl immediately began to touch him and say it was very soft and soft. The boys went further and reached the land of the beastmen. Hero felt that the wind here was completely different from that of human territory, despite the fact that it was the same summer. It seemed like it would be easier to bear here. The smells here were nice too. If they moved west of here, they'd end up in the Bjorn settlement. The Bjorns were very polite, so they might have the impression that they weren't bears. It was time to go down the mountain. Everyone did it very carefully. Hero was already thinking that even if it was revealed that he was human, there was no need to attack everyone then. Arnold kept telling everyone that the Bjorn's candy was something special. Hiro and Muir were surprised and said they had to try them. The guy asked Muir if she was ever on this land. It was very hard for her to answer that, so Hero said she could force herself because in any case he wasn't particularly interested in her past. If she had any doubts, then there was no need to say. But that wasn't the point. Arnold supported the girl and said, I understood your doubts, but now they were talking about Hero. Even if she did, had say something selfish, the girl agreed with her uncle. He promised her that one day she would tell her story, and they happily continued on their way. On the way they found flying books. Arnold told everyone to be careful, because these creatures are small. They pretended to hurry, but instead they attacked with magic. The books had different magical attributes, so it wasn't worth thinking they had the same magic. As they were the same, Arnold and Hero divided their opponents and ran to attack. V took the ones on the left. Hero investigated that the old man had opponents with thunder magic, and he had earth magic. He realized that when a stone hand flew to him from underground, that he was able to easily fight. And then he went after that magic book. He raised a rock behind her so the guy couldn't touch her. He asked you not to underestimate him, and pierced the book as easily as a stone while Arnold was still fighting his opponent. But the result didn't take long to get here. The man quickly ran to her and cut her in half. With one stroke, he began to laugh and tell Hero that this was his true power. The guy was surprised that the old man had so many emotions over the murder of a little monster. Then he saw that Vi was sitting and watching the winged creature. He assumed it looked like she found out in the blink of an eye, since there were no signs of magic being used. The girl ran the wolf cub into the water, and Arnold said it would take some time to catch them, so they should rest here. Hero sat under a tree to sleep and told the old man that if monsters showed up, he was counting on him. The disgruntled man said this guy was something. Muir defended him and suggested that he was probably just tired. After all, he always fought monsters and used a lot of magic. Arnold replied that this applies to everyone, but is very interested in the kind of guy he is. He has a very unusual strength at such a young age, and he is unimaginably arrogant. In addition, at a time like this, going to beastman territory as a tourist could be called suicide. Muir agreed with his uncle. It was the first time she met someone like Hero, even when he found out they were beastmen. He didn't pay attention to that. He cleaned it up, saying he wasn't interested, like it was nothing. While other people were afraid or despised them, Muir was still afraid of humans. But Hero did not cause fear. Arnold concluded that no matter what you see, this guy is unusual. Maybe has not even human, has probably a bad deity, or maybe a reborn perverted demon. Muir laughed and said his uncle was very funny. He caressed her, said she made him very happy when she smiled so much, and he will protect you, even if it costs him his life. But Muir replied that she must be strong, she wants to become stronger. Like Hero said, the guy wasn't sleeping at the time, and he listened to their conversation. Time has passed. The guy left again. They soon arrived at the settlement of the Bjorns. Muir immediately noticed how beautiful it was here. Arnold said the flower garden they were seeing was created by the Bjorns themselves. Hiro agreed that the view was incredible, but now they first needed to reach the agreement. Besides, it's going to be dark soon. He also wanted to try some honey candy, so they needed to hurry. Arnold got angry with this rush, and he started to get angry. The girls were walking backwards and laughing at them. The boys came to the village Bjorn. A man asked Susu to prepare faster. Susu replied that girls are not so unpretentious, they have a lot to do. At that moment, Arnold came to the man from behind, hit him on the back and greeted him. Max recognized Arnold and asked how he got there. They haven't seen each other in a long time. Arnold said he was still the same fat guy he was. Max looked at his old friend and asked where his ears were. Arnold laughed and said it was worth leaving this question and decided to present it to everyone immediately. He started telling the guys that Max was his friend a long time ago. He also introduced him to his friends. "We're very happy to meet you." Max said he was happy to see all the guests. Suzu left home and apologized for waiting. She saw new people and asked her father who they were. "Arnold, when you heard your name was Dad, you were very surprised." Max said when they last met, the girl wasn't born yet. Suzu started performing. She was 7 and grateful to Arnold for taking care of her father. The man bowed before her and replied that there was nothing to thank her for, because they would now be under her supervision. While the other girls knew each other, Max told his old friend they were already expecting a third child. He should be born soon. And his honey supplies were running out. So now they're getting ready to go to honey. Susu fortunately said she's going too, because there's nothing better than honey to strengthen her health, so she gets as much as she can for her mother. Arnold started crying and saying Mac's daughter is wonderful. The man agreed and said she's like his mother. After all, is sorry to leave you alone, especially after you've made such a difficult journey. Arnold said there's nothing to worry about. They'll wait a while in this village, because honey was also one of your goals. Max said he understood them, so they could wait for them. They'd be back tomorrow. Arnold asked them to take care of themselves, and they said goodbye. He went home and started telling his wife that he still didn't understand how Max got married to a beauty like her. The woman said everything wasn't like that. If he praised her too much, she could succumb to temptation. Muir asked if he could touch his belly. The woman agreed. Arnold said Mom was amazing. Hero listened to their conversation and said he was going out for some fresh air. He saw kids out there running and playing, but one of them fell and got hurt. The mother of that child came and said she was already here and asked him not to cry, because the pain would go away. Hero sat on a stump and remembered his mother, and he began to reason that if at that time he had the magic he has now, he would not have allowed the accident in which she died. He didn't understand why he was thinking about it now, because a long time had passed. After sitting outside, he came home. He asked if they had any books. They answered that, of course they answered, very rare. A long time ago, a psychic left them in the village. One of the books was The Adventures of Tinkle Wickle. Shiro went out and sat down to read the book. He found the plot of this very trivial book. When the world was full of wars, sorrow and suffering, a young man with similar friends entered the battle. Winning one battle after another, he became known as a hero. But along with fame came envy. The king of his own kingdom falsely accused the hero of attempted murder of the princess and executed him. When the hero did not, the world again plunged into conflict and war. Becoming a disembodied spirit, the hero sought a way to resurrect himself to fulfill his duty and make this world safe again. When the hero was looking for a way to be resurrected, he found some magic. This magic could change the world as it wanted. However, after losing his physical body, he could not use it. The hero decided to wait until someone capable of reliving him appeared. When that day comes, he, with the help of his new magic, will bring peace to this world again. First, he will destroy all existing countries involved in sins. After that, he will travel in a beautiful new world. The one who continues to support the color of hope, his name is Tinklewickle. Hero, after reading this, admitted that he would rather refuse to become a hero. Suddenly, Muir came running to the guy and told him that a big problem had happened. Max and those who had gone out with him had disappeared, and only Suzu had returned. They gathered around her. Hero asked Arnold if it was true that old Bjorn and his companions were attacked by monsters. They told him it was just like that. What appeared was apparently a monster. Suzu said Dad said he was a unique monster. Hero immediately remembered the artist who talked about something like this. He asked Arnold what a single monster meant. He replied that they could be considered more dangerous monsters than Shrank. In addition, unique monsters can have specific skills or problematic features. Normally, they are destroyed by groups of Shrank adventurers and above. After asking the girl some questions, the elder realized that they were attacked by a red spider. He started saying he was a unique monster who could appear anywhere, but for him to appear in the Honey Canyon and next to the hive, it was very strange. Hero said you needed to save them. Arnold told him that he did not know what he was talking about, because he had never fought a single monster. They were dangerous, and he had already said that only a group of Shrank adventurers and above could fight them. Besides, you need to look around at the weak Bjorns. At best, the strongest were for honey. Only elderly, women and children remained in the village, and his post was just C, and his level was 37. There was no way to defeat this monster. Hiro told the man he wasn't like him. Normally he'd be the first to jump and run to save people, so what was wrong with him now? Arnold got mad and started screaming that even if he wanted to save them, unique monsters were a different matter. Even if he went there, nothing would change in the end. He couldn't die now. Mac's wife went out on the street. She asked what happened to everyone, and he saw Sosa, who came back alone. The daughter ran to the mother crying. The wife asked Arnold if anything had happened to her husband. He replied that it looked like a red spider had appeared. They had fallen into the spider's claws, and it looked like Max had covered Sosa so she could escape. The woman couldn't stand it and fell off her feet, but the man managed to catch her and told her to be careful. Mom started telling Sosa everything was fine. She just lost her balance. Arnold kept saying they didn't know anything for sure. I saw him intervene in the conversation and said red spiders eat slowly, so they can have time. She asked Arnold if he agreed that his friends would die if they didn't. The man answered with gritted teeth that of course he did not agree, but he did not see a way to win. He once fought a single monster. This time he was lucky. He managed to escape miraculously, but most of the guys who were with him died, so he can't decide. Although has become stronger since then, he still can't die yet. Muir started to apologize to him and say it was her fault. The man kneeled down and said it was not so. It was his stubbornness. Raising her to become a pretty girl was her primary goal, and also fulfilling the promise he made to her father. I saw you tell Arnold to take care of your friends and not let them die. She said from experience that if a friend is sad, then he starts to hurt himself deeply. That's why she wants to help them. Besides, she wants to pay the debt for what happened earlier with the wing. Vinka kept saying she had a good idea of the strength of the one monster. He couldn't handle it alone, but now he had Vi and Harrow. Arnold thought of it and said it wouldn't work. Harrow had nothing to do with it. Even if it wasn't, he didn't want him to help. Hiro objected and said that of course he was involved. He had come so far to try the honey candy, he could not leave without trying them. If old Bjorn couldn't come back, then they wouldn't be able to make those sweets. If the only monster deprived him of the honey candy, then he would definitely destroy him. Mac's wife asked if they were sure they'd be all right. Arnold said they'd save Max and the others. She shouldn't worry. He wouldn't let the child grow up without a father. The women of the village thanked the boys for helping their families. Suzu's mother understood that she was simply showing the way. She asked to be careful. Arnold told Muir that he was leaving the village protection for her. The girl agreed unconditionally, because she understood the importance of this matter. They were seen as hero. The boys came to Honey Gorge right in front of them. Around the corner, there should be a monster. Vi felt it. Hero said he'd check it out himself, and they'd need to stay here. Vi asked if you were sure. The guy used stealth and went for it. The first thing he saw was a big bear. Everyone looking for honey was in a huge web. And they're still alive. Hero began to think what to do now. He could free them from the net himself. But suddenly he felt something. The spider was right above him. The guy started feeling a terrible bloodlust. Now he understands what was the aura of a single monster. If he hadn't used the stealth word, he'd already be dead, but by that moment the spider hit the stone behind which Hero was hiding and broke it. The guy couldn't believe the monster knew where he was hiding. He began to flee, but the monster did not remain idle. He threw a web at Hero. The guys came to his aid and fought off the web. Vi asked the guy if he was okay or not. She felt a great thirst to kill, so they ran to help. Arnold yelled at Hero that Suzu and the wingman hid in a safe place, so you don't have to worry. Vi said she'd distract him. Arnold right now must free Max and the others, and they need to hurry. The man ran to Hero and asked if he could fight. He replied with a tremor that everything was hers. As he said, "This creature is very dangerous. He sees a monster for the first time." Arnold noticed that the young man was not himself and asked what happened. But there was no time to talk. There was a riot. So the guys immediately paid attention to it. Vi had already begun to distract the spider. Her spear could easily cut or melt webs, so she said her spear was the strongest. Arnold wasn't surprised she succeeded. She felt no fear or doubt. Even if these feelings appeared, she would have enough strength to overcome them. Hero began to scold himself for not being so strong. If he was stronger, everything would be different. He remembered how he instructed Muir that if she was worried, she needed to get stronger. Arnold said he was going to save Max and the others. Hero apologized for his weakness and said he would help him. The man asked if he was okay. The guy replied that they would find more than one monster on their journey. And above all, he want rest until he eats his honey candy. Arnold laughed and said he now looks like himself. He touched the web, pulled it out, and said they're tough and thick, so you can easily climb up. He went up and immediately began to untangle. Max, Hero noticed that the spider had paid attention to them and screamed to jump, but it was too late. Arnold got stuck on the wall. He started trying to get off the web, but it was all useless. He started feeling weak. And then he passed out completely. Hero was surprised that the web could put him to sleep. He remembered Arnold's words that unique monsters can have specific abilities or problematic features. He hid behind a rock and called I saw it for him. The girl ran and the guy started telling her they could save everyone. Only after they killed the spider. He asked if she had a special move she could use. I said the myriads of fire in full force. But it would require enormous energy. It took time for preparation. Hero agreed and said that in this case he would be the bait, and she could start preparing her technique now. The girl went somewhere safe so nothing would bother her. The guy jumped from behind the rock and told the spider to come to him. Right now in the village of Burnov, Russo dropped a glass. Muir asked what happened. The woman said everything was fine, she just needed to lie down. Suddenly the daughter started crying. Muir ran to her and began to calm her down. She looked at Russo and suggested she looked like she was in pain. She trusted her uncle always and everything, so she didn't know what to do now to help others. She started to think a lot about it, and Russo felt something. And your youngest daughter stopped crying. Muir said he didn't understand what was going on, so she'd bring someone now. When she told the residents that they realized the baby was about to be born, so they needed to take care of Russo, they asked Muir not to worry. The girl decided she was going to Honey Gorge to tell the others about it. She would bring Max and Suzu back. In her opinion, it was the only thing she could do now. At this point, Hero distracted the monster with his explosions, but the counterattacks were too fast, and he didn't have time to do anything. But at one point the spider was still able to catch him and hit him. The guy flew against the wall and started losing power. He saw it. I saw above him with a huge fireball, and he screamed at her to do anything to win. She used the 5th stage of the fire meridians, and she threw a fireball at the spider. Hero helped her, and he glued the monster's paws to the ground to stand still for at least a second. The ball flew right at him. A merry Hero stood up and asked if he liked. But as soon as the smoke went out, he saw that the spider was standing in place, neither moving. The young man decided that we had simply lost, and then he saw Arnold on his front legs. I saw it fall off a cliff. It was covered in webs, so Hero thought it was caught when he couldn't defend himself. Vi told the boy he could hit the monster. The boy told her to wait, but the girl started passing out and apologized to him. As soon as the boy heard that, he was taken with anger. He took his sword and ran to attack the spider. Meanwhile, Suzu was hiding, and he heard that he had been quiet. She asked the crybaby what he thought. "Is it over?" At that moment, Muir jumped from behind a stone towards her. Suzu got scared and asked her not to scare her anymore. She asked what she was doing there. Muir replied that the baby was about to be born, so she came to tell everyone about it. She looked in the direction where the battle was happening. Suzu told her it had been very noisy there recently, but now everything has been quiet. Muir told her that she would see what was going on there, and they went to the battle place together. There they saw that everyone was on the web. Even Hero was passed out. He had a dream. He didn't understand where he was now, and then he remembered that he fought a red spider and lost it to him. He had assumptions. Either he died, or he was put to sleep through the web. But now it didn't matter, because for him it was the end. He knew there was nothing to regret. He was very naive. Suddenly he heard someone calling him. It was his mother who, before dying, apologized to him and asked him to live his life with dignity. Hero was awakened by this. He broke free from the monster's web, golden light around him. The girls looked behind the rock and saw Hero. Muir first saw him in such an unusual appearance. But there's something about his appearance that makes you feel warm and safe. The spider released a web. In response, Hero attacked him with a fireball. He used combustion, and the web was completely burned. The monster was about to attack the boy again. But this time he cut off all his paws and threw him on the floor. The girls saw it and were amazed by the young man's strength. He himself was surprised by his strength. He didn't even understand how he got rid of that web, and who could do such a thing with the red spider. He looked at his hands and didn't understand what happened here, but he felt a strange feeling, like he was full of strength. And he could defeat that spider. He started throwing balls off his finger. Of course, this spider was an excellent opponent to him. A low-level adventurer wouldn't be able to resist him, and that wasn't nonsense. But Hero promised to break the limits of this common sense. He used combustion and explosion and hit the spider. There was a powerful explosion, so much so that Hero could not stand and fly back, but still stood. There's nothing left where the spider was, and everything behind it was destroyed. The guy lifted his fist and shouted that they had won. They all went back to the village. Arnold shouted happily and congratulated Max and Russo. They had a boy. He admitted he wouldn't mind having a baby one day. Hiro said it seemed very rude coming from his lips, so he asked him not to say it. An argument began between them again. Muir asked you to calm down. Russo thanked everyone for everything they'd ever done for the village. She didn't even know how to thank you. Arnold asked her not to worry, and in fact many of them did nothing and Hiro managed to save everyone again. The guy said he was lucky. Arnold thanked you. I saw why she and Hiro defeated this monster. The girl replied that she had lost and Hiro had defeated the monster alone, which surprised Arnold much, since his position was inferior to his. Muir shouted that it was just like that. She and Susso saw him fight the monster. Susso was jumping for joy and saying it was really cool. Max asked Hiro by surprise what kind of creature he was supposed to be able to kill a single monster on his own. He said he didn't have to explain. Arnold asked Max not to pay any attention to him, since he was like that with everyone. The bear said he was grateful to him. The kid said it was all nonsense. He did it to eat honey candy. Max was very surprised to risk his life for something like this, and he said, "In that case you better get ready," because the villagers were going to have a celebration in honor of the newborn. They would put out the best honey delicacies they had. Muir came and said the baby was very beautiful. Russo thanked the girl and said that thanks to her, her son was born without complications. The next night, there was really a banquet with performances, and Hero started talking about the dishes he could see on the table, also adding that they used the honey they had collected that day. As soon as the guy proved it, he immediately realized it was worth risking his life for, but he was also interested in something. Did he understand correctly that some kinds of honey here are of a special variety? They smelled very familiar. Max told him that these varieties are created with the help of flowers growing in the Garden of Dagum. They have a different smell and taste. And the familiar smell he was talking about probably comes from white honey. They asked Hero if he knew what honey candy was. They were made of white honey. The guy realized that these were the ones who restore mana. Muir showed him how Susu dances. Max laughed and said she inherited her mother's talent. Russo was the best dancer in the whole village. And she's just beautiful, and there's also a crowd of beautiful ladies here, for it was simply a pleasure for the eyes. Muir told Hero that she wanted to know something about him. Can he create golden fire? The guy was surprised by that question. The girl agreed she couldn't see, but her flame wasn't blue like before. Suzu approached them and asked what they thought. About your clothes, and also about your dancing. Was it good? Haro replied that at her age she did very well. The girl ran happily to Max, screaming that Hero praised her. The young man noticed that Muir began to be ashamed and asked what happened. She turned around and didn't answer anything.